So I think we are knocking on the door of World War III. We're doing things that are so. That's why Jan, by the way, followed me because I challenged someone and I said, look, let's face this. This is a very risky game we're playing here. It's not what you say it is, and it's risky. And I think Jan saw that. And said, okay. Yeah, she really looks like a grieving widow to me.
Yeah.
Her mother, we do know something about. Her mother worked for a high-tech organization in Texas that did stuff that had to do with Israel's Iron Dome. Here's a theory that's low probability, but I can't get out of my head, that Charlie and Erica are both MK Ultra products. They were groomed by intelligence. And I've read so much about this. When they groom a kid, they take them at around age 5-ish. There's a certain, the girls and boys are different by a year, supposedly optimally, and they tear their personalities apart. It's an awful thing they do to tear them apart. This is not just, sleep deprivation. This is terrible stuff. This is bizarre satanic stuff, make them kill cats, all sorts of stuff. Make them kill other kids. They turn them into a complete zombie, multi-personality, schizophrenic, crazy, and then they reassemble them and create the Bourne identity. So, by the way, I'm not suicidal. Let's point that out.
Welcome to Discourse with Christian. I'm your host, Christian White, and today is a returning guest, Dave Collum, who is a professor of organic chemistry at Cornell University. He's a widely known commentator and best known for his widely read Year in Review. Dave, it's been a while. You've opened my eyes to so many things. The first time I had you on, so many different rabbit holes. I know we spoke briefly offline about that, and so grateful to have you back on again.
I was on another podcast with a guy in which I was something like his 5th podcast, and then I was returning after many. And he said that he now notices that every podcast at some point someone mentions what we talked about offline. He says it drives him nuts now. He realizes, you just stepped in it right there. Yeah. That's the trick is you want to start talking, then you realize, we should have talked about that online, not offline, that sort of thing. That's very common. And then it's hard to talk about it because you've already talked about it. So it's like doing a second take on a play or something. I don't know. And anyway,
absolutely.
Glad to be back. And sorry to put you off. I was a tough schedule this time because I was in the mountains and my wife wiped out 2 of our laptops and so I was using a Dell without audio or visual capabilities. It was 10 years old or something. I mean, it was really a mess.
Well, I wish I had a cabin like you.
It's a nice cabin, but it made it a less productive summer. I normally am more productive.
Well, sometimes you got to unplug. I think sometimes less is more in life.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I had a funny day yesterday. So 2 nights ago, I got woken up twice by security call we have a security system and said, we're getting a flood alert in your basement. I went down, I couldn't find it. And then they called me again, middle of the night, I couldn't find it. It was raining like hell, but then in the morning, I found that there was a serious leak in the upstairs bathroom. So I don't know how the flood detector got it, but the bathroom, there was water. And so it picked up something somehow. And then I took my car in. And I like driving beaters because I like to drive around a non-depreciating asset. You buy an expensive car, you're just wasting money. And I took it in, and the guy basically said the amount it'll take to repair this car is worth more than the car. Dump it. And so my car was totaled. But then the day got better after that. Well, not really, because then the silver gold backwardation problem started to unwind, and my portfolio got whacked yesterday. So it was just kind of an off day.
Well, there's something to be said about kind of being incognito. My uncle's a blue collar guy. He's done quite well for himself. And you look at him and you look at what he drives. I mean, you would never think in a million years. And so
Millionaire Next Door, famous book. Yeah. The rich guys, the guys who are rich don't look rich. One time, Paul Volcker said to his mother, Mom, why don't we have a boat like our neighbors? And she said, because we don't have a mortgage.
You go.
That was his message.
Yeah. Well, I've had to learn. Excuse me. I've had to learn a lot of things the hard way the past 10 years, and particularly in terms of not needing to keep up with the Joneses, not needing to go down that rabbit hole, which I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. But that with that being said, I figured we'd kind of start off with your latest thoughts as it relates to what's going on around the world and wherever you'd like to start us.
So the world's got a kind of a darkness to it, and I can't tell quite why. I can't tell. Maybe it's me, but my Twitter feed is nothing but darkness. I mean, some of it's funny, like that woman Katie something Porter, I think, who's running for governor of California, who multiple times blew up into a tantrum. So she's out of the race just because she couldn't control herself. That's the good stuff. Then you read about, we're going to be in World War III by the end of the day, and you read about civil war and battling between ICE and opponents of ICE, and it just seems like either my Twitter feed has figured out that it should just feed me crap all day, or in Zero Hedge, same thing. And so you really, if you're plugged in, you're getting a pretty gruesome narrative of what's going on in the world. Um, and I like reading about the world, but I swear it's getting darker. I actually these year in reviews that I write, which I'm not trying to plug, but it's part of the story. Um, Bob Moriarty, a gold bug, grizzled old veteran gold bug, is finding them all on his dime. It's a very odd thing, and so they all combined are about 4,000 pages. And so all summer long, I've been editing my own writing to get sort of edit it to get it ready for a more bound form. And I've learned that things have changed. There's a distinct temperament change in the writing that I did, which I believe is a change in my sources. I think, for example, 10 years ago, you could get a hold of something that you believed to be a fact, and now you don't. So now you'll read about something and you'll save it, and then the next day you'll read that it's all wrong, and you'll go, well, what do I believe now? So I think 2013, 14, 15, you could get information that you could kind of take to the bank, and nowadays there's very little you can take to the bank without digging very deep and still wondering if you're on the wrong side of the story. And the other thing is I've gone down too many dark rabbit holes. We talked last time about satanic cults and child trafficking and stuff, and that's a rabbit hole I've been digging down for 3 years, which I'm sure your listener can imagine that that's not a cheery subject, right? And you find out that Hollywood's littered with them, and you find out that the music industry was littered with them, and you find out that politics is littered with them, and you can't fathom how dark people can get. The Satanism is a religion. You can't think of it as a mental illness, although I think it is, but it's also a religion. And the stuff they do, you go, I don't know how a person does that. So sometimes to your own children, right? It's just a very strange thing. And I'm reading, reading about Israel and Palestine. I'm reading, I've always been interested in Russia and Ukraine now, so I wrote a lot about Ukraine, and I thought Trump would clean up the Ukraine mess pretty quick, and it hasn't worked out that well. Um, uh, I've had a gag order on myself to not talk about Israel Palestine for many years, and I'm slowly but surely pulling off the muzzle because I've seen enough. And I did a Tucker Carlson podcast, which was cool. And I inadvertently, I didn't know it, I was walking into a war zone. And the war zone was multifold. One is Tucker was in a full-blown war against what I refer to as the Zionists, which is not a pejorative term, right? It's like a boomer's a certain age person, a Zionist is a certain age person, a certain sort of worldview of Israel. If you say either with a sneer, it becomes a pejorative term. Right? It's one of those, you boomer. It's like, well, okay, I'm a boomer, but you have to look at me that way. Um, and that's a dark story, right? That's a very complicated story. Now, I'd sworn it off, but then I inadvertently walked into Tucker being in the middle of that war, and turns out Tucker was also in the middle of the Charlie Kirk story in a way that I didn't know was happening. And then Charlie gets assassinated, all of a sudden Tucker's role pops out, and I go, so when I mention something in passing on Tucker's show, and next thing I know, I look up and Mark Levin is hammering me, and then Ted Cruz is hammering me, and then Meghan McCain is hammering me, Laura Loomer's hammering me, and some guys who live in Haifa are hammering me, and Victor Davis Hanson is hammering me. I go, what is that all about? What I said was innocuous. As a good friend of mine who's Jewish and super smart and super famous said, they didn't listen to what you said. But what's really true about this debate is I just saw Bobby Kennedy said that circumcision correlated with some health problems because of the Tylenol connection, where you circumcise, you give the kid Tylenol. And Representative Nadler, who I like to call him Wadler because he's such a fat bastard. Normally I wouldn't pick on a fat bastard, but he's such a bastard, I'm willing to add fat up front. He's really repulsive at many levels, but he called it anti-Semitic. And then the Twitter comment section said, oh, by the way, the ratio of not Gentile to Jew circumcised people is 30-1. So it's not anti-Semitic to say that the circumcision has health problems. And Wadler got hammered. He really got pounded, which is good. When I got hammered by the biggies, by Ted Cruz and Mark Levin, who just by chance and by luck a week earlier I'd made a scathing indictment of Mark Levin, which you could say, well, therefore it's karma, but also it's when I say I hate the guy's guts when I write about it, I will be able to say, look, it's not because he picked on me, because here's a tweet from a week earlier, which I expressed my great disdain for Mark Levin, who I will refer to as a rabid bobcat in heat. And these guys are savages. They're savages. Now I'm taking you down rabbit holes again, but I'm not anti-Semitic. But if someone calls me an anti-Semite, I do want to smash their face in, really, to be quite blunt, because you're just being a punk ass bitch at this point, right? You're just being a bully, and so I walked into that one not knowing, and so I'm going to write about it. I had a personal gag order on it, but too many dead people and stuff. I finally said you gotta go there, so I'm going to go there, and then I'm going to get Mark Levin, doing his rabid bobcat heat routine on me again probably, and so he can jump off a cliff. I don't care. So yeah, my world's a little dark. My world's a little dark. Yeah, there we go. That's.
Hey, well, I'm totally with you on that front as far as the Zionist thing. I'm on, I don't know, plus or minus 100 episodes by now. Certain topics, you're very cognizant of. Okay, do I want to go talk about that? And naturally, kind of being more, green to the space. You hear others talk about it who are, bigger and such. And okay, now it's become more acceptable that we can have this dialogue, this conversation.
You'll still get killed. You'll still get killed.
Do you think they killed Tucker or excuse me, Kirk? I mean, what's your assessment on that?
Well, so the Kirk story gets very complicated very quickly. I have the most extreme view of Kirk. So I saw it happen within 5 minutes. And so I happened to be pretty close to Twitter when it happened. All of a sudden it popped up on my screen. My first visceral response, my very first tweet drew negative responses because I said something in a tweet about how I was not Charlie's biggest fan. And I said at one point I was scheduled to have dinner with Charlie and Candace Owens years ago, but a free speech problem came up and I didn't get to do it. And then I made some comment, which really was sort of stream of consciousness. So it really was what I was thinking. I said, look, there's mothers and fathers all over Ukraine who have dead kids too. Let's not forget that, right? And there's people who really thought that tagging that onto the Charlie Kirk assassination was a bad thing. And it might be, but it wasn't horrific. I was actually expressing concern over other victims of violence, right? So you could say maybe I shouldn't have said it, but it's not like I said he deserved it or any stupid thing like that. I had gotten to think more highly of Charlie because I had been binge watching a little Tucker Carlson and he was on it. I thought Charlie's narrative was better than I realized, but I still think Charlie was an opportunist who spotted opportunity and was having a big effect apparently, although I had no idea it was having a big effect until after he died. Everyone told me he was having a big effect. So there's something about that. So anyway, so you look at the case, and there's so many rabbit holes there. There's about 8 different shooter theories. There's the videotapes of the shooter and the text messages and all these things. All I need to know, that they're interesting, but all I need to know is that the official story breaks apart very quickly. So the official story makes no sense whatsoever. So once you know that, you don't have to know much more because you say, okay, it's some sort of state-sponsored or something sponsored assassination. So it's no longer just a murder, it's an assassination. And so to learn about bullet trajectories and everything doesn't make sense because all you know is, look, it's screwed up, the story's screwed up, the cover-up is in play. I don't need to know much more than that. The question is who, and you have to be willfully blind to not say that one of the lead candidates is Israel. Now, the reason I say that is not because Israel just kills people, but Charlie had been a super, super Zionist, non-pejoratively Zionist, although some people would put the pejoratively Zionist part on, until about 8 weeks earlier. This is what I knew nothing about. And then he had turned on Israel. And he had questioned whether October 7th, someone had a stand-down order to let it happen, which was my theory right from the beginning. It seemed obvious to me that Israel would not get so successfully attacked without knowing it was coming. And it would be yet the 9,000th false flag in the history of civilization, right? So that's not that shocking. But I've just become now an anti-Semite for saying that. And so nothing made sense about that. But so then the question is why would they kill him? And he appears to have turned on Israel. And then you hear all these things about how he was paid handsomely by, we'll say AIPAC is a general term for lobbyists, right? AIPAC is a lobby, but it's just, we'll call it AIPAC. He was handsomely supported, and then he turns against them. So you could imagine some whackage going on there. I had been reading about TikTok and how they said the Chinese were causing all sorts of trouble with TikTok. And then someone pointed out, oh, by the way, TikTok is a big Palestinian holdout. The kids are supporting Palestine on TikTok. Next thing I know, the U.S. is saying you got to sell TikTok to us. I'm going, when do you get to make that claim, right? Who gets to say you have to sell it to us? What's that about? And then it becomes pretty clear that it was a consortium of Jewish billionaires putting together money to buy TikTok, and so it became clear that it was an Israel-sponsored move. And then Netanyahu just admitted it. So that theory is now that conspiracy theory has now become fact, and it's being bought by Larry Ellison, who's a super Zionist. And so there's all these things happening. You now can see the teams forming. So you've got the guys who are saying, look, there's something fishy here, and it looks like Israel whacked them. And again, it's not that shocking. I think they do their fair share of assassinations around the world, and I think our CIA does, and I think it's the sort of the rough world we're in. But then there's the ones who are saying you're just, you're mentally deficient if you buy into such ridiculous theories. I go, you're on payroll, dude. I'm sorry, but you're on payroll. And because you could say it's right or wrong, but to say it's ridiculous, you're on payroll. And now the famous quote is $7,000 because there's rumors that AIPAC was paying $7,000 a head for for influencers to post favorably, right? And I don't even know if that's true, right? We're back to what's a fact. So that's the story. Now, here's the deal. Here's where I go off the rails completely. So you got all these different potential shooters. Again, I don't care. I think the least likely is the guy on the roof that we've got a video of. That one looks like the most preposterous to me. Try to get information about Charlie or Erica Kirk. You can't get good information. So neither family had representatives at the memorial service. Neither family's been interviewed. Right? They're ghosts. You find out that the most you get about Charlie is that he was not that liked in high school and he was considered rude. I heard so that could be fake, I don't know, but you can't get anything on Charlie to speak of. You find out some guy, I think named Montgomery, was the guy who intercepted him when he graduated from high school and supported him to form TPUSA, right? You go, that's odd, a rich guy who, by the way, apparently it's hard to track that guy's money. And he grabs a kid out of high school to support him, right? You'd think maybe we wait till the kid hit puberty or something, right? This is a little odd. Then you find out TPUSA was first, what's the term for it when you register? It was first registered as an organization in 2002. So TPUSA has been around long before Charlie showed up. And so Charlie is a ghost. You start reading about Erica and you find out that Erica has a mother. If you use AI, you get statements like, we think so-and-so's mother's name is such and such, and you're going, you think, right? That ought to be an easy thing to get for a famous person. And then the reason you dig into Erica, because if you watch her at the memorial service, you watch her interviews and stuff, she doesn't look like a grieving widow. I'm sorry. And I saw a body English guy, look at it and analyze it and say, everything makes total sense. I go, no, you're lying. I'm looking at her. I go, this chick is not a grieving widow. She's screwed up looking. Then you find out she was worth millions of dollars before she met Charlie. She was in a Miss USA pageant that had Trump ties, which people like to point out. None of that bothers me really, because he was involved in a lot of pageants. But she was in Romania, supposedly running an organization having to do with children. That I don't know if this is propaganda or if this is residue from the internet finally surfacing, but it was said to be tied to child trafficking. So all of a sudden Erica Kirk is looking weird, and then you see pictures of her. And you ever see Robbie Parker?
Don't believe so, no.
So if you go online and you search Robbie Parker smirk, you'll find a picture of a guy with a smirk on his face. He looks content. If you did it right now, you'd see it. Robbie Parker smirk. Maybe you could share it. This is one of these tidbits where you go, there's something wrong in the universe.
Okay, you mentioned Rob. Excuse me, you said
Robbie, R-O-B-B-I-E or Y, Parker.
Smirk, okay.
Smirk. Boot up images, and I'll point to the one. I'll direct you to the one.
Screen. Window. Here we go. Let's see, entire window.
This is one of these things that kind of changes your worldview as soon as you say, okay. Look at the top row, sixth from the right, from the left.
Top row, sixth from the right, you said? Okay.
That right there. One more. That one. Click on that one. I think that's it. Click on that one.
Okay, clicking on it.
See that smirk?
He has a smug look.
Yeah, but it's a smirk, right?
Yep.
That's the father of a kid who was shot in Sandy Hook that morning.
Wow.
I know that's not real. I know that guy did not lose his daughter to a shooter that morning. That's not a nervous tick.
Yeah.
You would not smile like that. Any parent would know you would not smile like that for a goddamn calendar year after your daughter got shot. Now, if you watch the whole video, he stands up at the mic and all of a sudden he's blubbering. He's just doing his thing, the shattered father drill. And if you go back to the images, look at number 2 from the left.
Number 2 right here. This one, yeah.
Yeah, click that one and bring it up. That's about 2 seconds later.
Wow. This reminds me of one of the of Clinton smiling after one of the guys was killed at the funeral services. So there's a GIF that is circulating of that. This is remind me of that.
But blow that up and let people look at it, because it is.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Now he's sad. Okay, something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know any details to know there's something wrong. That's Sandy Hook. That's what cost Alex Jones $575 million because he didn't buy this story. Okay, so I don't know what's true and false about Sandy Hook. I do know that Robbie Parker is wrong. So now you go back to Erica Kirk. You can take it down now. I just wanted to show you that this is the kind of thing that catches my eye, and I go, oh, no, that's not right. So you look at Eric. Now boot up Erica Kirk. Let's do that one. Let's do the experiment.
Okay. All right.
Boot up Erica Kirk.
And on a side note, you said Erica Kirk smiling?
Yeah, just to make sure we have no trouble finding it.
Okay. Let me share the screen here. Yeah, it's been on a side note. It has been interesting to listen to people's commentary who are like psychology experts, and they're like, everyone's saying that this is not congruent. That
this is not what a grieving person would do.
Correct.
Now, there was this one guy who tore it apart. Look at that, right in the center, top row center.
Top row.
One over. No, one
right
over. Here. Yeah. No, yeah, that one.
Yep.
But there's
kind
even
of
better
theatrics.
ones. Yeah,
it's like theatrics. Yeah.
And so if you watch her memorial speech, it looks completely fake. She doesn't even look like a good actor.
Mm-hmm. I could pull it. It's like
look at the one. Yeah. Wait a minute. Stop. Yeah, right upper second row, far right. Second row,
far
down.
right here.
That
here,
one,
this one. I remember that one. Yep, I remember.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, she really looks like a grieving widow to me.
Yeah.
Her mother, we do know something about. Her mother worked for a high-tech organization in Texas that did stuff that had to do with Israel's Iron Dome. Now, maybe that's coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those scratch your chin sort of thing, right? That in itself doesn't mean anything. Jim Morrison of the Doors, his father was super CIA, deep state guy, right? So in any event, but there's something wrong with the Erica Kirk story. And her background story, and this whole Romania children not-for-profit orphan thing smells wrong because it turns out the Eastern Bloc was big into trafficking, huge into trafficking. And so then the question is, here's the question I would ask. And this is a low probability, but I can't get it out of my head theory, and that is that Eric. And where did they meet each other? Do you know where they met each other?
Well, I believe it was almost like an arranged marriage from what I heard from some sources.
But do you remember where they claim they met?
I'm guessing Israel.
Israel.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So again, none of these.
This is crazy. This world.
This is not like Building 7 falling, right? This is the kind of thing that makes me go, I'm not putting this story to rest yet. So here's a theory that's low probability, but I can't get out of my head. That Charlie and Erica are both MK Ultra products. They were groomed by intelligence, and I've read so much about this. When they groom a kid, they take him at around age 5-ish. There's the girls and boys are different by a year, supposedly optimally, and they tear their personalities apart. It's an awful thing they do to tear them apart. This is not just sleep deprivation. This is terrible stuff. This is bizarre satanic stuff. Make them kill cats, all sorts of stuff. Make them kill other kids. They turn them into a complete zombie, multi-personality, schizophrenic, crazy, and then they reassemble them and create the Bourne identity. That is what they do. Now, different people have different capabilities. I was on a Zoom call with a couple women who had somehow recovered themselves in adulthood. One of them was named Kathy O'Brien. She's one of the most famous. If you were to say name a famous survivor, everyone who knows this world would say Kathy O'Brien or Annika Lucas. Juliet Engel's a close third, potentially. And she didn't even know she had been trafficked. She got her MD degree. But she knew she didn't have any memories of childhood. None. And she's got, I don't understand this. And it turns out that you can be talking to a person who's been trafficked, and you can talk to a person, you're talking to a person, one of the personalities. They don't necessarily know about the existence of the other 10. So you're talking to the nurturing personality or the fighting personality or the whatever, the personality that showed up to do certain functions. And so Juliet Engel, for example, was a honeypot expert. They would say, go get that guy, and she would do it, right? Kathy O'Brien says Gerald Ford raped her repeatedly, right? I mean, and she's been saying this for 40, 50 years. So she's been self-consistent. Annika Lucas said that David Rockefeller was hammering away on her badly for years. They tend to have these preferred handler types. So in any event, so this is the weirdest world. This is the world we kind of hit last time too. But what if Charlie and Erica were groomed? They were born identity, and then they said, okay, you guys, Erica, you're gonna marry Charlie. Now, boot up. This is the next one. Boot up Charlie Kirk's children. Okay. I've done the control experiment for this.
I'm going to pull it up here too. And on a side note, I was going to mention there was a lady, Fiona Barrett, I believe it is, out of Australia. Her commentary on the satanic stuff, and she mentions the Kidman or Nicole's father. Boy, that's another thing. You mentioned Annika Lucas. That's a fascinating conversation sheet. But anyhow, here are the children.
David did an amazing interview where he pried out of her that it was David Rockefeller. Now, you won't be able to see. You can see this. Your audience won't be able to see this, but they can do the experiment. Charlie Kirk, a family man, right? If there was ever a family man, it is Charlie Kirk. Find a picture of Charlie Kirk that shows his children's faces. Now, if you, for example, look at
this one,
I don't know
probably
who
not.
That is. I don't know who that is.
It's probably not even the kid. Maybe not.
Well, so what you do is if you go to, that's the first I've ever seen that was even a candidate. But all these others, the kids are facing away. And once in a while, you'll see one where the kid's facing, and they Photoshop a hat over the kid's face. Now, you say, so people I've said this to say, well, they're protecting their children. I go, but these photos are being taken by other people.
Yeah.
Right? These photos are not selfies. And as a consequence, you find one with like a MAGA hat photoshopped right over one of the girls' faces and stuff like that. But so I did the control experiment. I said, okay, let's search Candace Owens' children. Right? You can't, you don't even have to do it. Her children's faces are all over the internet. Mm-hmm. You have no trouble spotting them. Right? There we go. Mm-hmm. Right? So then the question becomes, is it possible? This is about as wacky a theory as I can come up with, but I'm not letting it go until someone convinces me. What if the children are props? They're going through airports. They're famous. They're going from gig to gig to gig to gig, day after day after day. I mean, the guy was a tireless crusader for whatever it is he was crusading. And the question is, was no one taking photos of these kids and putting them online? Someone said, you can hire people to scrub everything offline that you want to. So that's maybe the explanation. But when you add it all together, I am left with a sense that we don't know who Charlie and Erica were. And that troubles me.
There are no breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
or little,
they're
I
really
should say,
ghosts.
I guess.
Her mother is about the only one, and then this guy named Montgomery, who, again, I'm not an investigative reporter. I am reading investigative reporters, so I'm sort of second derivative. So I could just have it wrong. But that's a dark story. So what happened? You know, did they do it to say don't turn against us? Because it seems to have backfired. Netanyahu's denied assassinating him something like 3 times now. Since when does a president have to go public and deny assassinating a guy? And now you've got all the talking heads who are clearly on payroll saying you're a complete idiot if you think he got assassinated by Israel. You're not a complete idiot if that's on your bingo card. Doesn't mean it's true. But it's sort of like saying I think the CIA assassinated Kennedy, or I think the mob assassinated. There's these various potential candidates. Now the problem with Charlie Kirk is there are not many other contenders besides the nutty guy who's really hit. That story's been blown out of the water, in my opinion. There is nothing left of that story. It is in tatters. So then the third possibility is if they really weren't assigned marriage, maybe it was planned that he would be martyred. I'm sure Charlie didn't plan it, but maybe if the whole thing was, because look at that ceremony, right? What was that? How many days after he got killed? It was like,
yeah, I mean, 2 weeks or something like that, or 3 weeks, or
less than that,
yeah.
I think. But he could you put together that ceremony? I mean, if you put the Rolling Stones in Cardinal Stadium, could you have it ready in 10 days?
And do the fireworks and have all those people ready to speak?
It's kind of tasteless looking, My email box is nonstop TPUSA email fundraisers. At one point, it looked like they were going to try to shove Ben Shapiro into the lead position, which in terms of prominent conservatives, that's logical, but the Israel did it, that doesn't really work anymore, right? That actually becomes a fundamental problem. Ben Shapiro took over TPUSA. The other thing is he's not likable. Ben is brilliant. And I, for example, intentionally listen to Ben articulate arguments because if anyone can convince me of something that I'm not convinced of, I'll give Ben the shot at it. So I listened to his pro-choice argument carefully, pro-life argument. I said, if someone can make it, he made as good an argument as you can for pro-life, in my opinion. And but he clearly is not the guy to run TPUSA when Charlie is suspected of being assassinated by Israel. That really would not work well. So, by the way, I'm not suicidal. Let's point that out.
Well, there's also the Ukrainian. I also wanted to mention there was some speculation. I guess I don't know, a family member or somebody, something with Ukrainian that Charlie was on a kill list or hit list. There's a name for it. I'm blanking out on.
I haven't heard this one, but there is supposedly they're building sort of a Jewish satellite state in Ukraine, and I don't have a problem with that even. I mean, what I have a problem with are genocides. Those don't work for me. There's a question. My wife doesn't. I think my wife doesn't like me talking about this shit because she doesn't want to rain terror on my family. I don't blame her. I like to ask people a question. I said, name for me a Western country. I say Western because there might be some island republic in the middle of the Pacific that this would not be true, that wouldn't lie their asses off to optimize the narrative for the elite's wishes, right? And they all do it nonstop. That's why I wrote about the history of World War II last year, because I find that the narrative of World War II seemed to, I started spotting potholes from authors who had gone down rabbit holes and said, hey, by the way, the story is not what we were told. And so I went down, someone just this morning gave me total shit for going down that rabbit hole. And you know what he did? He said, because Michael Malice, whose book I read, because he's a Jew. And I'm going, get out of my face, right? Jesus Christ. Now I'm being accused of being a bad guy for reading a book written by a Russian Jew, right? I'm going, oh my God, I can't win. And so I asked, name a country that wouldn't lie to optimize the story, period. And the answer, there isn't one. And for example, we knew that they were going to attack Pearl Harbor. There really is very little doubt they were going to attack Pearl Harbor. We knew actually to the morning, in my opinion. I dug into that. But we still tell the story because it's part of our narrative. It's part of our story. The polio epidemic. You want to hear a good one? This is a good book. If you have time to read, which you may not. Moth in the Iron Lung. I was reading about vaccines for 20 years, casually, very casually, not in deep depth. I have a genetics major, not that deep. I mean, but I had noticed some stuff, and I found it interesting. I read books that talk about how hard it is to make vaccines and stuff like that. So I was reading about vaccines about 6 months before COVID showed up, just by chance. If you want to say what is the high watermark of Western medicine, it would be the polio vaccine, right? Turns out, moth in the iron lung, compellingly convincing story. Again, true, heaven only knows in this era, but compelling. And I got it recommended from Chris Martinson. It was recommended in an independent read from this guy, Pierre Corey. These are smart guys. It turns out poliomyelitis was a description of a symptom. So it was when you showed paralytic behavior. That was called poliomyelitis. And they called it that back deep in the 19th century. Very rare. And then it shows up. And it shows up both proximate geographically and temporally with the appearance of arsenic-based pesticides to fight the gypsy moth. So the gypsy moth gets to the U.S. in the late 19th century, and it starts beating the shit out of us. And they come up with arsenic salts to kill it. And then they got better ones that stuck to the leaves better and stuff like that. And where they were spraying, polio shows up. At the same time, polio shows up. And they pretty early on suspected the arsenic salt. So here's what the story is, but the book's still worth the read. In a newborn, the spinal cord is kind of unprotected. It reaches significantly below the spine. And it happens to be proximate, and I should remind the reader never use the word close proximity because that says closeness, which is linguistically an abomination. It's proximate to the intestines. And so what appears to happen is if you damage the intestine, things get to the spinal cord. So when they started damaging the intestine, you started getting paralytic behavior. Now, there were varying kinds of it. There were patterns that didn't add up, but they got on the idea of the virus. And then the scientific community did what it so often does. It said, there's the answer. And they started ignoring things that didn't fit the pattern. Now, I happen to work in a field of chemistry where that was a chronic problem. And my career was just unraveling the crap in the field that I was in and sort of saying, no, this is actually what's happening. And it worked really well, actually. But so they homed in on the poliomyelitis, the virus, and they blocked out the other alternatives. Now, things like pictures of the iron lung. When I was a kid, I saw a picture in Life magazine of the wave of iron lungs. If you boot they're horrifying. You can't make a kid feel mortal. But those iron lungs were scary to a kid. You're going, they got to lay in those iron lungs. They can't come out of them. It was horrifying. I had a friend who was one of the last polio victims, one of the only ones I knew as a kid. So what happened? Well, they got rid of the arsenic salts and brought in DDT. It still destroyed the intestines. So they started bathing everything in DDT. They finally realized that DDT was a problem. Now, what I like to ask is, if DDT was a problem today, would we figure it out? And I would say no, because we'd blame global warming, right? We'd say, oh, the raptors are dying because of global warming. So that's the idea of getting narrow-minded, right? The scientific community getting too focused and not letting open debate occur, like in COVID. So we did the DDT. We finally got rid of DDT. They were trying to come up with a vaccine for the virus. And there were some real abortions. I mean, there were some really bad results. And there's a couple of them. The famous one's the Salk vaccine, but there's a couple that worked. And they happened to work right when the DDT spraying had stopped. And so they worked when the polio epidemic was burning out. Holy fuck. So read Moth in the Iron Lung. You don't have to believe it, but I think you will find it to be an overwhelmingly interesting story. Another great book, by the way, is The Great Influenza, which talks about the 1918 flu. The biochemists, molecular biologists love it. It tells the history of germ theory and medicine. It talks about the 1918 flu, which really was a killer. It wasn't just we died of pneumonia. I mean, that virus fried your brain. And that's a great book. And it talks about the early 20th century guys at Rockefeller trying to figure shit out. They were really very smart guys. So we've got these narratives that we will never let go. The polio vaccine is never going to be let go. World War II is never going to be let go, even if it's true that Stalin controlled the flow of World War II because FDR's right-hand man was a Soviet spy. Harry Hopkins, a Soviet spy, was chief of staff. Because they define us. So now you say, so no Western country's not going to lie their ass off. So now I like to ask the question, what happened on October 7th? When I'm talking to someone, I see them sort of seize up a little bit because they realize they don't have a good answer. And someone will say, I'll get answers like, well, we know a lot of people died. And I go, do you? No, if I had to bet, I'd say they did. But I also know, like 2 days later, Brett Weinstein, who I think is brilliant. Brett, I love you. I'll give you a big hug. He's probably not listening now because it's probably, whatever. He did a podcast with a woman named, oh God, I keep forgetting her name. I've got to memorize it. She's an Israeli woman who worked on the wall. 2 days after October 7th, like the 9th, they did a podcast together. And they very, very delicately, but very clearly made the case. There's no way Israel didn't know it was coming. Now again, false flags are so common, you say, okay, that's not the problem. It is a problem. But it means be careful interpreting everything. So for example, you say, well, what about all the hostages? I go, do we know who they are? I watched the whole Syria gassing and stuff, and they were recycling bodies and stuff. You'd see the same kid in different scenes, and it was absurd. There were guys who wore white hats who were the good guys, then you'd see them and they were the terrorists at night. It's just insane storylines. I ended up on George Galloway a couple times, which is a big podcast, like a Tucker Carlson podcast, right? Because I called out the Skripal poisoning in Great Britain as bullshit. So they said, oh, it's Russian technology. The prime minister said, oh, they poisoned his father-daughter. The Russians poisoned his father-daughter with Novichok. And I looked at the Novichok and said, holy shit, my sophomores could make that shit. And so I called bullshit. Next thing I know, I'm getting calls from Al Jazeera and stuff. I was the only organic chemist to say this is bullshit. This is not uniquely Russian technology. There might be a delivery mechanism that's technologically tricky, but the drug. So what did I do? I was teaching an organic synthesis course, which is how you make molecules. And I told about this international incident that I'd found myself up to my ass in. And I said, so here's the structure. Design a synthesis starting with phosphorus oxychloride, which you don't know what it is, but it's a 55-gallon drug chemical that you can make the Novichok in 3 steps. And they all got full credit because it's absolutely brainless chemistry. It's a sophomore organic lecture course sort of question. And then it turned out that the I'm doing what I did on Tucker. I'm going all over the place. It turns out these guys got poisoned 8 miles from Porton Downs, which was Great Britain's chemical warfare lab. That's kind of like the COVID showing up 8 miles from the Wuhan lab, right? It's got kind of a similar feel to it. And I think it's possible the chemists at Porton Down realized they were busted. And when they were finally called out and said, tell us this, they said, it's not uniquely Russian technology. There was a Ruski who was considered a famous expert on this shit. And he said it was Russian, and you couldn't tell which side he was on, which I think is because if he was an ex-KGB, does that mean he's really not a KGB now, right? And he said something about, he thought it was Russian. They said, well, the structure's in your book. And he says, well, I don't know if they have my book. I'm like, oh my God, this is getting so stupid. So that was a fun rabbit hole I went down. There's no question. I don't know who poisoned these guys, but it was either the Russians or the 150 other countries in the world, including small island nations in the Pacific, who have the technology to do this chemistry. And then I started getting pestered by Russia today because every time they have something really contentious, they thought the loudmouth from Cornell would have an opinion. And I'd say, no, I'm not commenting on that. They called me a lot. That was a pain. So you don't know what happened on October 7th. The woman Efrigson, I have to look this up. Fennig, God damn it, I do this on every single podcast. I like her, and I feel like a douchebag for getting her. But her Fennig Efrigson, you can see where the first name and last name have a similar sound to it. And I mix them up. Efrigson. Efrigson.
You look it up too here. Let's see, Efrig.
Fennig. Oh shit! I'm sorry. I apologize to you.
Oh, you're
I'm
good.
gonna look it up and memorize it.
I'm looking it up.
In any event, so she said the claim was that they planned the whole October 7th thing without using electronic devices. She said, we have eyes and ears everywhere in the Gaza Strip. She said, nothing in the Gaza Strip happens without us knowing it. Nothing. And I believe that. My respect for Israel's intelligence is at the apex. There is no question that the Israel intelligence operation is the very best. So all of this and my inability to understand the Middle East, despite having read a lot of books and stuff, kept me silent. But then it just started I realized I'd crossed the dotted line from being agnostic because I didn't believe I could possibly join the conversation rationally to cowardice. And so now I'm talking about it now. They're slaughtering Palestinians. If you want to try to prove to me they're not, have a ball, but maybe the photos are AI, but I think they are starving them. And so here's the interesting question. Maybe you can help me with this. All throughout history, people have done this, right? William the Conqueror slaughtered 300,000 Anglo-Saxons or whatever. I don't know. Mao, Stalin. They're all over Hitler. They're all over the place. Why does this one bother me? Why is this one up my ass? And it could be simple. It could be they picked on me, right? It could be it's like you went at me. It could be that I don't like the fact that it's yet another narrative that we're not allowed to talk about. That bothers the shit out of me. But even like the Ukraine war, which there was a huge narrative, but you could talk about it. I found about 40 or 50 guys who were really trying to get at it, like Mearsheimer and Greenwald and Gonzalo Lira, who died, and we were part of the problem. We helped cause his death. And And there were about 40 people, Tucker, who were really trying to get to the Ukraine-Russia story, who concluded Putin was not the problem. And that's my conclusion. This one, it terrifies people to talk about. And it is because of the power of the Israel lobby. And if you want to know what the major source of anti-Semitism is this year, it is the gaggle of bullies. I'm not anti-Semitic. My department's filled with Jews. I've known them. I went to high school. There were Jewish kids. I didn't know who was a Jew and who was not. I didn't grow up in an anti-Semitic world. But when I can't say anything without bringing the wrath down on me, when Bobby Kennedy says that circumcisions might be causing trouble because the Tylenol used, this happened yesterday. He gets accused by one of our representatives for being anti-Semitic, and he should be denounced. That when Ted Cruz says, when I joined the Senate, it was my number one goal to support Israel. And Tucker is hammering him. He says, no, that is not your number one goal when we elect you. And he calls him demented. He doesn't even blame Netanyahu. He says Netanyahu's doing what he thinks is best for his country. So in some sense, he's just a nationalist. I'm not willing to give him that much slack, but I think that's Tucker trying to tee up his argument. He says, Lindsey Graham is a sick bastard. Ted Cruz is a sick bastard. They're evil. He really goes with those guys because they're supposed to watch out for our interests. And supporting Israel may be in our interest. It could be a moral argument, a military argument, an economic argument, a technological argument. But it should be in our interest. Even if it's just a moral argument, it should be in our interest. What I think is bothering me is it's the people who are calling the shots have us second.
Well, I think the more of us that,
my ass.
Yeah, I think the more of us that, have a discourse around this stuff and not have to hide or talk about it, the more, we'll make having the discussion and figuring things out pertaining to this and trying to get to the bottom of things and understanding the nature of things. Only then will we see progress. And it's very powerful.
Yeah,
right?
They can't shoot us all and they can't attack us all. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
There is safety in numbers here.
Yeah,
But here's the other problem. I don't want to hurt Cornell. But, my Tucker podcast interview was interesting, and I went all over the place, just like I did today with you. Part of it's because I knew Tucker knew something about all the topics. And so I think I went in there saying, I'm going to hit the high water marks in a very big way. And by the way, before the talk, we had breakfast for an hour and a half, and that's when he figures me out. That was clearly what the purpose of breakfast. So I sat there with his booking agent and we chatted. He was just trying to figure out who I was. After the talk, we spoke for another hour and a half. And the shit we spoke about for an hour and a half was way, way deeper than the shit we recorded that got me in trouble. But I got a nice email from my dean saying, look, I don't agree with everything you said, but it was a great, great interview. So he didn't spot a problem, right? In any event, the hour and a half afterwards, and I wouldn't tell you about it online except for Tucker went public. And that is, I mentioned my favorite topic, satanic cults. And Tucker went nuts. And he said, it's huge. I told my colleagues this, and they all laughed. I said, was that when he's off his meds? And I didn't say anything, but I'm thinking of saying, do you guys really think you understand the world better than he does? Is that really the stance you're going to take? Because we're sitting at breakfast and he's getting text messages from senators at breakfast. And so afterwards we're talking, his staff is sitting there bug-eyed, and we are talking about satanic cults and pedophile networks for an hour and a half. And then he had it, and then so I had been quiet because I go, I'm not bratting him out on that one because, and 3 times he said to his staff, "We're not recording, right?" But then he just had a guy on who studies satanic networks and trafficking. And so I said, okay, so now I can at least mention that it was on his mind.
Well, as I mentioned, to you offline, you are the
There you
first
go again.
person to
Offline.
have that enter my awareness. No, really, and a lot for those who don't have a show and do interviews like this, especially kind of early on, I'm making sure, apart from having the conversation with Dave, I'm checking to make sure, okay, am I too close to the mic? All these, other little things, or background noise or whatever. And so I'll have to go back to really, and I did that with the one that you and I did several months ago, Dave, with the satanic stuff. And that just blew my mind, and that went down. I went down a whole can of worms. I started pulling up books like on Internet Archive, and it's interesting because certain topics and things that people smirk at or laugh, they think like you're just some goofball or whatever.
Nutcase.
There's truth to
Conspiracy
that.
theorist. Conspiracy theorist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Did you
there's
find
literature
anything
in.
that seemed wrong? Did you find anything that seemed wrong? Do you remember anything that seemed?
No. I read. Some people might roll their eyes for I read I read David Icke's book. I kind of skimmed through it just to kind of get the meat potatoes of it.
I
I
was on a
read.
Zoom call with David Icke.
Oh, okay. I'd love to have him on one of these days.
Yeah,
I
I don't
was
know
listening
him.
to him earlier.
I don't have a connection with him. I might have his email because of the way the Zooms are done, but
Pawns in the Game, the 1950s book, Pawns in the Game. Anybody can read it on Internet
I
Archive.
don't think I've read that one. I don't.
Yeah,
I pause.
yeah. It
Is
talks
it
about
good?
it's good. I skimmed through it, but it talks about Illuminati again for people who have not really been exposed to this other than fill in the blank. It sounds cuckoo, but yeah,
You get
and
into the
concern that
Bavarian
yeah,
network.
it's weird that the founders expressed concern that over across the pond, you have, a secret society, trying to infiltrate, et cetera. But, and then actually on one of the videos I had on a guy named, I'm blanking out right now. Joaquim Hagopian. I have him on, and some people might think he's out there in one way, but he's fascinating to listen to. And he has a series. He has a book called "The Pedophilian Empire," and that he wrote about. And and then I went on YouTube, and it's so hard to find stuff. And he introduced me to Yandex, and then using like
Oh,
DuckDuckGo.
Yandex. Yandex is
Yeah,
critical.
yes, because I'm Google. What I'm realizing is the very basis from which we perceive reality. Everyone thinks that's. I'm trying to think of the term that is the basis. And what I'm coming to learn more and more is no, what we perceive to be the base of reality is flawed and it needs to be challenged in so many areas. And like you go on Google, right? It only pops up certain results that are kosher. Yandex is going to be a totally different experience. So then I started going down the rabbit hole
So that's
and
the
then watch.
Russian Google, just for those who don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, the
Yandex.
beauty of it is you say, well, Russia's going to have its own issues. But the one thing Russia's not doing is filtering out the dark shit about us.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, did I introduce you to Yandex on that? Did you know about Yandex?
Yeah, Joaquim Hagopian did. You introduced me to Abramovich and
Oh yeah, that's a
Amir.
funny story.
Yeah, and then the pedo artwork, Anderson Cooper. Like I was showing my folks that they're like, this is crazy. Got a lot of interesting feedback. People were blown away by that. And then what else? There's a mirror. I have it on one of my YouTube videos. What I'm starting to borrow from academia. I want to have all my sources on there footnoted so people can see
A
exactly where,
little the
there's a receipt.
scholarship, yeah. So you
Uh,
say, look,
um,
I might be crazy, but there is a source of what I just said, right?
yeah. And so in one of the videos actually it's the one I had with Hagopian on, I have different videos of people who have been abducted. Oh, yeah, I'm going to pull it up right now here. Let me, it is Joachim, and then his last name is Hagopin, Armenian guy. Former West Point graduate. He's got a website called I think it's called Pedo Empire. but what I was getting at is with the videos that I was watching.
He has no Twitter presence whatsoever unless
No,
that's
no,
the
not at
wrong
all,
feed.
not at all. Yeah, here it's
Okay.
yeah, he has it all on Amazon. Yeah, satanic. It's yeah, I think it's called like yeah, Pato Empire, and anyhow, fascinating rabbit hole to go down. And what it seems like to me, and sometimes when I have guests on, I'm trying to get that out of them, but I recognize some people don't want to talk about it. But how I perceive this world is at the very apex behind, the Bank of International Settlements, behind the Bank of England and the Dutch and all this, going back hundreds of years and all that. There's this cabal, as cuckoo as it sounds, and they are involved in trafficking, and they are ritualistic in nature. I don't think they are all working together. At times, I think at times they're, in the words of Michael Yon, they're competing oligarchic groups.
Uncle Jan
But
just followed me on Twitter, which was kind of interesting. I know why he did, but
oh,
he's
who was
just the
that?
guy I've wanted. Michael Jan.
Oh,
It's the guy I
oh,
wanted to connect with, so that was good
yeah,
news when he showed up.
oh yeah.
Um,
But
have you the sacrifice and stuff in the modern era is so unimaginable. If you had to bet your life, would you bet that it's real?
I would bet it. Yeah, yeah.
That's the
Um,
problem.
it- it-
So when you walk through the world and you see some couple with their kids, you go, they could be doing this. How
yeah.
is that possible? What is it that would cause parents? I mean, there's parents who supposedly sacrifice their firstborn child. How do you do that?
I guess
It's
when
just
you're
not
when
imaginable. It's not imaginable to us.
I guess when you're that inculcated, I've got one of my companies is a landscape company, and I'm at a job site once a week out there, and there's a little boy, probably 5, 6 years old, who walks from the neighborhood nearby all the way to the school at the end, and I see him, when I'm out there in the morning, and when I see him, I think about the stuff that I know, and obviously it's not my place to talk to the parents, but I'm like, I would not have a 5-year-old. He's probably 5 or 6, literally, very small little guy. He'll just walk to school, he'll run, and I'm just like, boy, if people only knew how many kids get,
Well, so
grabbed.
my
And,
read on is that not that many get grabbed off the street because it causes too much trouble. And someone said, I watched an interview of a guy who was supposedly a European trafficker. Now, you don't know. You listen to these the voices, you can't see his face, voices a little muffled, things like that. But you listen with the idea of saying, did I just hear bullshit? That makes no sense, right? And so that's when you realize the guy's lying to you. But sounded credible, and he said it's not worth it. We can round up dozens of kids from godforsaken places. Like it's called harvest season when there's an event that allows them to scoop up kids. Perfect examples: Haiti. I was in a Zoom call with a guy named Tony Schaffer, who's a famous Army intelligence officer. He's famous, and they booted him because he was too outspoken. And I said, Tony, I'm interested in the role of child trafficking in geopolitics, which is what got me into it. No one would read this shit just to understand it. But is it controlling decisions made in the world that are influencing us? And I said, I'm interested in the role of child trafficking in geopolitics. And he starts talking about Epstein. And he goes on for a little while. And I said, I think we kind of had a beat. We kind of have a beat on who Epstein was and what he did. And it's possible he didn't traffic as much as he just provided services to powerful elite, that sort of thing. That's one of the arguments made. I said, let me ask you a simple question. Does the Clinton Foundation traffic children? He said, oh, absolutely. Now, I knew the answer to that. That one is easy. That's a case that's easy to make. There are Clinton Foundation members who spent time in Haitian prisons who had to get bailed out by the Clintons. It's above the fold news stories. And one of them, a woman named Laura Silsby, you can look up Laura Silsby. Whoever's listening, just boot up Laura Silsby and you will find it. Laura Silsby then gets married, changes her name, and what is she doing now? She is a high-ranking person in Amber Alert. You want to find pedophiles, find an organization that involves a lot of children, especially ones that seem to involve trying to deal with the trafficking problem. They are all infiltrated with the traffickers. So there's all these international, national organizations deal with child trafficking. So the question I like to ask, okay, so 350,000 kids came across the border. Who knows if that number is right, but it's a big number. It could be up by an order of magnitude, it's a big number. And you can even hear it on the news, right? CNN will mention that. Child trafficking problem, blah, 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 blah. Have you ever heard anyone ask the question, where are they going? Do the newscasters ever grow enough of a brainstem or enough of a spine to say, where are they going? Who is getting these kids? You see traffickers who look like gnarly South Americans. You see kids occasionally getting saved. You see perp walks and mug shots that you can't tell who it is. But these kids aren't cheap. A guy named Ted Gunderson, who was shortlisted to run the FBI years ago, he turned and he started giving talks. And there's like a 25-hour montage of his talks. And he said that back in the 90s, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid would bring $50,000. Where do you get them? Well, Ukraine. How would you get them in Ukraine? It's trivial. There are orphans everywhere. Their parents are all getting killed. The chaos is so great that if you grab a Ukrainian kid off the street, and no one's life is in enough shape to do anything about it. So I have a friend who lost their kid, and the wife was South American. And the kid disappeared, and they couldn't find him. And then they eventually found the kid. Not a problem. But the wife said the kid's gone. The default was if your kid is missing, they're gone now. But in the United States, you get these big efforts to find the kid and you don't need the hassle. So I don't think they grab them off the street here as much as you think. But there are NGOs paid for with your tax dollars to help traffic these children.
Well, I was listening to Sean, I think it's Sean Atwood is the show, and he's brought on some great guests. He's brought on that, I don't know, he was some former Canadian, someone in the Catholic Church, if I'm not mistaken, blanking on the guy's name, Kevin or something. Anyhow, he talks about the trafficking that has gone on. I'm saying this as a Catholic, born and raised Catholic. The trafficking that goes on in these Latin American countries all over, and all the locals know, everybody knows what goes on, but they acquiesce. They do what they need to do, give up the kids in order to, hey, let's sacrifice one of the children so we can, sustain ourselves here.
I was binging Sean Atwood last week. I had to check to make sure. Sean did some serious jail time. He's got a checkered background himself.
No kidding. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
He's very open about it.
Wow.
I think he ran drugs or something.
Gotcha.
But he interviewed, he did a series on Jimmy Savile.
Yes. Yep.
Now, Jimmy Savile is the most famous pedophile in all of Europe. He ran a talk show. He was like Merv Griffin. He was like Donahue. He was everywhere. And in the debate, in one show he did, they said he didn't traffic kids. He was just a perv. But another guy said, of course he trafficked kids. The word on the street, which doesn't mean shit, is that he was trafficking kids to the elites, to the royal family, right? And he got knighted by the queen. It's just, and the guy was just prolific pedophile. And he got away with everything. No one dared say anything about him. And there's a picture of Sean Atwood hugging a 9-year-old kid named Keir Starmer, who's now the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And I'm going, oh, that's a little on the weird side, isn't it? So what's
Well,
Keir Starmer's origin story? Macron and his wife slash husband slash, the Macron story is really funny, and I think Candace Owens might have it right. Macron's wife is probably a dude, right? My Zoom group included Archbishop Carlo Bagani, who called out the church, who actually said that Macron's wife is a dude, said Obama's wife is a dude. He didn't use the word dude. That's kind of not Archbishop lingo. He got excommunicated last year. He said, I think it was him who was quoted as saying, pedophilia is the currency of geopolitics.
remember you mentioning that on the episode.
Third in command at the Vatican. He said it on the Zoom call. And in public. The Zoom call, by the way, I think is recorded. Some of them were, some of them weren't. So this is a strange story. So then the question, so to finish the Macron story, Candace Owens makes the case that if you track down Macron's wife slash whatever he is, she makes the case that Macron's wife is a guy and it's his biological father. Which really bends the mind. Now, she's being sued by the Macrons. And she's saying, bring it on. I am so ready for you. Now, what I can tell you is if they sue and they don't show up with the DNA test, they're going to lose. Right? You can't.
Absolutely.
And the DNA test will first of all show whether there's a Y chromosome in there. That'll be trivial. And it also say, wait a minute, these two are related. They're not married, they're related.
Well, and of course, Macron is a former, or I guess even probably still working with the Rothschild Bank and those entities.
Yes. And I hate talking about the Rothschild Bank because the anti-Semite lingo flies fast. But
oh, yeah.
The brutal reality that you have to face is they controlled something like 40% of the world's wealth at some point. So if you can't talk about the Rothschilds and criticize them and go into all the things they did geopolitically, then you got a gag order. And so actually one of the I'm reading a book right now on the origin of the Israel-Palestine problem. And it certainly was funded by the Rothschilds, the start of the Jewish state. And that makes sense to me. One of the things that really changed the rhythm of the whole story was in the 1920s, where they changed the land laws, the ownership laws. And I think the claim was that there was this kind of collective ownership, a little mini Marxism, where the town kind of owned the land sort of thing. They changed the rules, and that you could buy land. And you go, okay. Well, that's when all of a sudden the financial imbalance between the Jewish state and the Palestinian state went wild. Because all of a sudden now you can pour money into Israel and boom, bang, 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 buy up land. And so the friction started in the 1920s. And this book is clearly pro-Palestine. But I can't stand listening to a biased book, even if it's biased in a direction that I think is crudely right. I really don't like feeling molested by either argument. And it's pretty good. It doesn't, my antennas don't say stop reading. I don't want to read some super duper pro-Trump book, even if I think some of the things he does is good. I want a person to thread the needle. And so in any event, that's the Israel-Palestine story, and I'm going to write about it if I can get off my butt to get serious about it, because it's I've got so much data now, and I don't even know how to organize it.
Yeah.
And I've got the Charlie Kirk story, which is about Israel.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that. And I was going to mention, and I know Michael Yon had mentioned it too on a prior episode, his enjoyment of reading old books, like pre 1800s, and where it hasn't been, of course, everything's got a bias, I mean, and such.
But it
But
hasn't been rewritten, right?
yes, and the power of the archive. I was reading Trudeau's Silencing the Past, which was interesting, talking about, how, that the Haitian Revolution has kind of been obscured more or less by the powers that be. And then some of the books
Have
I've been
you read The
reading.
True Believer? Have you read The True Believer?
I have not. I'll have to
You
write
got to
that
read The
down.
True Believer. You got to read The True Believer.
Okay, let me write that down here.
1953, Eric Hoffer. It's an easy read, and it's a brilliant read about how mass movements occur. And he was a homeless guy at one point. I mean, it's really an interesting story where he
And
Silencing
then
the
I'll
Past. That sounds like a good topic.
Yeah, it was believe it or I'm actually taking advantage of my GI Bill, so I'm on the side outside of the
So what
podcast.
military were you in? Remind me. What
A
military?
Navy. So I'm actually working on a master's. So that was one of the books assigned to me.
How long were you in the Navy?
Long enough. No, I'm just kidding. I was in just a handful of years.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you're not
and
career Navy.
no. Long. I got out right
So have you
a little
read
before
about the
COVID.
USS Liberty?
I'm sorry.
You read about the USS Liberty?
Oh yeah, that's something that's been completely.
Yeah, I avoided that.
Yeah.
And I've been here. So for those who've not heard about it and are listening to this podcast wondering why you invited me, USS Liberty was a ship that the Israelis tried to sink in 1967. It was a U.S. ship, and the Israelis tried to sink it. It is not disputable they tried to sink it. It is not disputable that the U.S. covered up the story. There's documentaries on it. My advice to somebody who wants to get into this is you start with the documentaries. You just search USS Liberty, watch a couple of YouTubes. They interview people who are on the ship, and you'll be left with they're not bullshitting me story, right? You'll say, this is true. Then you read one of the books, and it'll fill in all the details of all the admirals who were raised in all the holy hell and stuff like that. So you get the details from the book. And it's clear that the Israelis tried to sink the ship. It's fairly convincing that the U.S. pulled back and let them. LBJ was president, since he's certainly one of the most psychopathic presidents or leaders in history. That's believable. But we actually, they tried to sink it and knock out all the communication so that they could then say that the Arabs sunk it, and then they would suck us into a conflagration in 1967 against all of Israel's enemies. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Israel says it was a mistake. It was not a mistake. That's a stupid argument. They knew. The guys who were on the ship said they would wave to Israeli planes flying by who knew they were there. And then all of a sudden one day, after multiple flybys, just bam, 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 the ship just got completely scorched by Israeli planes. What's not known is how much the U.S. had signed off on. So it appears that the U.S. somehow, they certainly covered it, but it appears they signed off in advance. Is that your interpretation of it? That the ship was put in harm's way. It really looks like it was. That I wouldn't bet my life on. If we knew they were going to sink the ship, we're more evil than the Israelis, right? That's evil. And of course, so is 9/11, so is Pearl Harbor. There's just all these things there's so many of them. The Lusitania, right? It's just nonstop.
Yeah.
Gulf of Tonkin.
Well, when you mention Pearl Harbor, I'm always reminded of the story of the guys who were stuck in the Arizona and still
Why couldn't they get
tapping.
them out? Why couldn't they take a torch and cut them out?
I know, but
They were in there for like 30 days.
Yeah, there were people in there for a long time in pitch black, I believe in the Arizona.
And you can hear them
and they could
tapping.
not
You
get
can
out.
hear them
They
tapping.
they could hear them tapping, maybe using Morse code or something like that. But that's really spooky. That's
Right,
really spooky.
right.
Yeah, what's I guess that's the luxury of when you have a little bit of margin in life where you're able to go down rabbit holes. You're able to, interview interesting people such as yourself, and you start to kind of slowly want to remove yourself from the matrix. Like I have a totally different perspective, a year ago from what I do have. Like I have
But
a
the
high
question is, what do you
skepticism.
get out of it? So I used to think that if I learned something and if I straightened it out and if I wrote about it, that I would somehow be having a positive effect. And I'm now beginning to wonder if that's not just delusional. So this is what's making my life a little challenging this year is that I feel like I listened to a friend of mine, David Einhorn, got interviewed by a guy I know digitally well, Mike Green, and they talked about markets. This is related. And Einhorn said the market structure changed. He said the markets no longer respond to news. They no longer, if earnings are bad, the markets don't care. The structure has changed. The market's being driven by forces that they were not driven by before. Einhorn presents it. I don't think he believes this. I have dinner with him usually about once a year, although that's going to get harder since I don't think his trips to Cornell are going to be as frequent. He talks about it like it's not going to change. Now, I don't think he believes that. I think in some sense that's him just saying it is what it is. Now, if the markets really don't respond to economic news, if they don't respond to revenues, if they don't respond to these things, then they're just NFTs at this point. I blame crypto a little bit on this. It's not the crypto guys doing it, but the world has watched trillions of dollars of paper wealth appear based on something that has no revenues, no earnings, no anything. And I think we kind of cryptified the equity markets. Gold could do it too. Gold's rocking now, right? Gold could do the same thing. It's all about just price. And but if it doesn't anything to do with fundamentals, and it never will. It's not to say that they won't correct like crazy, but they're not correcting in response to as you collect data and you throw it into the pot, we're not heading for price discovery. We're not heading for a knowledge that says, okay, here's the fair price. Now all the knowledge has been dumped in the pot. We've started, and here is the fair price. Here's what the stock is worth. Here's what the market's worth. Then it becomes absurd. I don't think the absurdity means therefore it won't stop. I think it means it will get ugly at some point absurdly. Right?
Oh
And
yeah.
I don't think the world's ready for the absurdity because I have the markets at 200% over historical average valuation. So regression to and ultimately through the mean is going to be grisly. It's going to be really ugly because I believe it's going to correlate with the boomers getting older. I think that'll be certainly part of the story. And I was in a podcast yesterday with a couple of guys, and he kept saying we got to lower rates. I said, why? And he gave me all the arguments. I said, look, everyone in the world agrees that the Fed fucked up completely by lowering rates too low for too long, to which I add the third component, too many goddamn times. Right? Now, every gigantic brained economist on the planet, market analyst on the planet is now saying we need to lower rates. And I go, are you not listening? What? I seem to be the only guy saying no. And the podcast yesterday was like, well, the younger generation can't afford houses. And I go, well, rather than lowering the rates to make them affordable, how about letting the price of the house come down? Which then takes it out of the hide of the boomers who benefited from the bloated asset prices, instead of destroying the currency to get the price of houses within reach of a generation. So I would raise rates. I mean, what's someone yesterday said, well, the rate should be, sort of roughly 3.5% because that's the rate of growth of GDP, which is a model I've heard. And they claim that's because you sort of keep the somehow the two should correlate. And I go, but shouldn't they correlate with the nominal GDP, not the inflation adjusted GDP, which therefore shouldn't the rates be, if you assume that the inflation numbers are real, which they're not, let's pretend like they are to have a conversation. Shouldn't that therefore make the interest rates be 6.5%? Make your case. I don't understand. More importantly, what I'd rather do is either have the rate set by market forces. People say, well, the Fed don't set the long end of the curve. I go, when they lower rates, what happens to the long end of the curve? It goes down. People buy bonds. And I'd rather see them just set, if they're not going to let market forces do it, just set the rate, say 5% till eternity. Figure it out for yourselves. But that's not, every big brain person I know says the rates should be cut. And I go, do you disagree that the rates have been set too low, too long, for too many times? And if you agree with that, why are you now saying the solution is to set the rates too low again? And they'll say, oh, they wouldn't be too low. And I go, 4% is too high? That's like a post-World War II rate. Again, the world's psychotic, I think. I'm going to own this narrative. When the bus finally comes, they got to give me credit. They're going to have to give me credit. Because I'm the only one saying how overvalued it is. Everyone's saying, oh, it's ridiculously overpriced. I go, it's 200% overvalued. That's math. Sorry, I keep pounding the desk, and I realize every time I listen to a podcast that I recorded, I can hear my hands smacking the desk.
No, I agree with you. It's interesting. I guess, the can is just being kicked down the road. One day everything will go kaboom.
Rip off the
with
bandage.
The markets. Yeah.
Rip it off.
I was also going to comment, sorry, and I don't know how you're doing on time, but
I'm fine. It's you that's on the clock.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I got a little bit of more time. I was going to mention, everybody, in light of the socio-political and economic stuff going on, everybody makes references to Rome. It's become very cliche, but what I'm finding what's very interesting, again, as it relates to older book scholarship, I was reading about the Habsburg Empire, and I was reading about the Spanish Empire, and it is very interesting. A lot of the
What's
same.
That one, the grand strategy of Habsburg.
Yeah. So actually, this is Henry Kissinger. Not that I'm a fan of Kissinger, but
well, I was going to say
he praised
that didn't sell it for me.
I know. Because I used to think highly of him until I realized no, Henry Kissinger is not the person who he's made out to be. But
he's a neocon.
Yeah, but I brought up the Spain thing because this is the mid-late 1600s. The cross-dressing. There was a reference to that. I'm just reading this for a master's. I'm reading
they
the book.
Say that the whole gender issue surfaced at the end of empires. I'm not sure if that's really a correlation or just a coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be that the decay of moral values or something is part of it.
Yeah. Well, there was mentioning of that with the Spanish nobility. And then all the silver coming over. Of course, others have talked about how that impacts the economy, but a lot of the financial issues. And then we hear it time and time again. You hear about the Dutch. I mean, all from the Habsburg Empire to the Spanish creditors, they're in enormous debt because of the wars they have going on. 30 Years' War, Spanish War Succession. It's just so interesting.
Is Joseph Tainter's Collapse of Complex Societies. Now, one of the common denominators of all the books I read now is they're all audiobooks.
Okay.
I can find time to read audiobooks. I can't find time to read. There's a book called 180 by, oh God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. It's a pseudonym. It's called 180. And it's an 800-page book that I had to start reading because we didn't have internet and I was in a cabin and I needed to do something. And it's a great book. It basically he does what I do on podcasts. That is, he just hits all the narratives and said, here's the alternative. And I haven't been able to torch any of his alternative narratives. So as he's gone through them, and I'm impressed with the clarity and the thoroughness that he hits all the narratives. This is an 800-page book. And I thought it was just me. Greenberg, God, I'm looking it up. I'm on Amazon. I'm going to look it up. And then I'm listening to a guy named Tim Price do a podcast. So I've known Tim for many years and met him personally and hung out with him and stuff. And he's really a smart guy. And he was talking about this book, Transforming His World. 180. Oh, come on. You're going to give me too many choices. I'll search Green.
I'm looking up two here.
This is people listening to a podcast drive them nuts, Googling when we're supposed to be talking, but maybe it's pleasant for us to stop talking to them for a minute.
Yeah. I'm pulling up some of the stuff here.
I'll think of it when it'll surface.
Yeah.
It'll surface.
Yeah.
It'll surface when I least expect it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you don't have these the rise of alternative media more and more. I mean, it's I think it's causing a major shift in people's paradigm. So.
And God damn it.
I can always edit this part out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you had me thinking of just now that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. There you go.
Oh no, I every time I see, I think of the satanic stuff. That Cardinal Vigano, former archbishop. I just couldn't believe. Yeah, I watched the same video you should. I had to pull it up on X because it's hard to find. And here he's talking about this stuff. So and so I guess one of the questions I'd like to ask is, how do you define the power structure? Who's at the top of the pyramid in your opinion? I know we're kind of we kind of said, oh, it's just like this cabal, but have you been able to put your finger down on it or?
Well, it's an interesting. So I tend not to read about the Illuminati and stuff. What I find is in this storyline, the further back you go, I think the more likely you are to lose your listener because they think of it as old news, history, doesn't apply to the present. So if it does apply to the present, you're gonna have a tough time making the case. There's a funny anecdote, like Eyes Wide Shut, right? The Tom Cruise movie, which, by the way, Tom Cruise is a Scientologist, which is a very dark organization. And he was in Eyes Wide Shut, and it's a satanic movie. Hollywood reflects reality, and I think Hollywood actually has marching orders to do that. I don't think it's a coincidence that Born Identity looks real to me. I don't think it's a coincidence Eyes Wide Shut looks real to me. Eyes Wide Shut was a satanic thing about the elite, and it was filmed in a castle in Europe that happened to be where all the shit went on. I go, that's a coincidence, really. Rosemary's Baby was made by Roman Polanski, who was into the occult, and whose wife Sharon Tate got murdered by Charles Manson, who was into the occult. There's a book called Weird Scenes in the Canyon, which is about Laurel Canyon in California, where the 60s music scene, that was the heart of it. And it points out the weird shit that was going on. All these famous musicians, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Frank Zappa, the Monkees, they were all there. They all had military backgrounds. And I'm not talking military like you, where their father did 4 years of Vietnam. I'm talking deep state shit. Frank Zappa, who kind of ran the canyon in some ways. He was really kind of a leading figure, and he hated the hippies, which is a very strange thing. He, in his later years, worked for the Bank of International Settlements. Frank Zappa. And at the top of the canyon, there's this CIA facility. It's called the Lookout or something. I can't remember, but it's a CIA thing with the antennas coming out of it and stuff. And at the top of Laurel Canyon, and Steven Spielberg was there. Timothy Leary lived there, who was very poorly hidden CIA operative, and he was the heart of the hippie movement, heart of the LSD craze. He was CIA. CIA controlled every milligram of acid in the 60s. They controlled the entire global supply of acid. So if you were taking acid, you were taking acid that the CIA had owned. And so Laurel Canyon had mysterious deaths, mysterious tunnels, mysterious everything. And so if you read Weird Scenes in the Canyon, there's a lot of innuendo where they make kind of a connection and they don't nail it airtight saying, but there's a tunnel and they talk about, so some guy goes in the tunnel and there's a poorly constructed grave that says something like Rachel 1922. Just weird. So then here's the punchline. In 1977, this was like late 60s, early 70s. It was in its heyday. This is where guys like Crosby, all their parents were military. And not some of these guys like Crosby didn't have any musical background. He had to learn how to play the guitar or whatever. And he sucked. They sucked. Stills recorded all the tracks on the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young albums. And the person I know, someone who lived in Laurel Canyon from 77 to 79, my wife. And I started asking her, she said, well, I don't remember seeing that. And I'm thinking, you're probably trafficked, you don't even know it. She said Topanga Canyon was darker, it was a dark place too. So these plots, they're stranger than shit. And I read The Ultimate Evil, Search for Sons of Sam. So I was in New York when David Berkowitz was whacking young chicks in Brooklyn, I think it was, or the Bronx or whatever. So David Berkowitz was son of Sam. And it turns out the story didn't hold together well. Too many people said he had long, blonde, stringy hair, short guy with curly hair, drove a Volkswagen, drove a van, there was all these different identifications. And then they got David Berkowitz. And they did this. They're done. We're done. Wrapped it up. And then Berkowitz reached out to a journalist. So Berkowitz was clearly nuts. He talked about satanic shit, and his dog would talk to him and stuff like that. So it's like, well, this guy sounds like a guy who'd kill a bunch of women, right? And so it was the summer of 77 when I got to Columbia that he was finishing his stint as a murderer. He reaches out to a journalist, and all of a sudden he's not sounding totally insane. And he starts telling him stuff like murders that went on in California that he'd have no way of knowing about. And eventually this journalist, guy named Maury Terry, was able to connect a nationwide network of Satanists that had a stronghold in, I think, Montana and in California that connected David Berkowitz with a bunch. And he admitted to killing some people, but he said, there's many of us. There's many of us. So he started talking, and the journalist said he was acting like he was now scared of something. And they actually reopened the case, and then they reclosed the case. Now, one thing you find about these satanic cults, you read about them, the finders and things like that, which they found trafficking behavior in each of 3 cities and then independently, and then all of a sudden they go, wait a minute, this is the same group. This is the same group in 3 different cities. The feds get into it, and then they go away. Gone. Diddy, there's a great example. Diddy was the Epstein of Hollywood, right, of the rap scene. And then the question is, what happened? Well, so they arrest Diddy. Why? Well, there are lawsuits against Diddy. Civil suits. showed up first. I think the FBI arrested Diddy and prosecuted him to get the tapes. So now the lawsuits don't have the data. And what did he get prosecuted for? None of the bad stuff. He's going to do a couple of years in jail like Ghislaine Maxwell, who, by the way, Trump's talking about pardoning. Do you see that? Trump's talking about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Well, so one of the $1 million questions is, so Trump's super pro-Israel. I don't know, pro-Israel, supportive of Israel. I'm not sure pro and supportive are the same thing. You know, and they point to Jared Kushner and say that's why. I don't know. Some people say he's terrified of Netanyahu, that he's afraid, that he's playing along because he's got Baron Trump, who is his pride and joy. And but the question is he compromised? And a lot of people who know him well say no, they don't think he is. Not in the Epsteinian way. You know, he obviously has all sorts of shit that you wouldn't want out, but that's just because it's Trump. But it's getting increasingly odd looking. You know, and when the Epstein tapes, you know, Bongino said, we got to get the Epstein tapes out. And then he gets into a position of power and he says, there's no Epstein. There's nothing. He and Patel. I read Patel's book when he was nominated. I said, I got to read his book. And I thought he was a good guy. No, Patel's a waste of space. But Bondi, I had a low opinion of from 10 years ago. Her behavior during the Katrina nightmare was awful, in my opinion. So I thought she was an idiot, and she's lived up to my low expectations. And it was bad when Bongino and Patel said Epstein killed himself, because none of us believe it, right? So, we found the two guys who think he killed himself. There are two. Okay, I thought they were urban legends, right? And then at one point later, Patel said there's not a shred of evidence he trafficked children. Oh, really? Then at one point, journalist, maybe Peter Ducey, asked Bondi, are we going to get to see the tapes? Now, I don't think you put the tapes on the evening news is my guess. I'm guessing they're probably grisly. But you could show the tapes to Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi and say, look, you can't record them, but here are the tapes. Write stories, right? Something. You could let them out. You could give honest, Glenn Greenway, you give honest people a look at the tapes to tell the story. And Bondi says it is just child pornography. You're not going to get them. And the phrase just and child pornography should never be in the same, they should not be proximate to each other. So she either ad-libbed and blew it horribly, or someone who's writing her lines for her needs to be fired. Or they're gaslighting us. If Trump had come out, instead of saying, this is distracting, this is a conspiracy, this is, right? I mean, the shit they all said was just awful. If they'd come out and said, look, here's the deal. We've seen them. You're going to have to live with it, but we can't let it out. What we've seen, we can't let out for reasons we can't talk about. I could live with that. But that's not what they did. Do you agree with that analysis? Do you agree with the idea that if they had said, look, they're awful, we can't let it out, that would be a lot better than what they did? Or is that just my opinion?
I think that'd be better than the current alternative.
Yeah. I mean, they look like, it's not going to go away.
Yeah,
By the way, when they released the JFK tapes, by the way, the JFK files, which we're probably getting fake shit at this point. They said there was really nothing in there. There was some stuff in there that got no press, and that is there were stuff that handwritten notes said block out the stuff in brackets, right? Redact the stuff in brackets. Some of it didn't get redacted. They were references to Israeli intelligence in 1962. And I was reading something about Israeli intelligence involved in something in 1953, and I go, they were only a country for 5 years. Aren't they supposed to be trying to figure out how to build houses and stuff?
Well, it's very interesting, the history is, especially with its ties with, I might be botching it, what is it, the Sykes Peacock? I'm saying Peacock Pico agreement. I'm probably totally botching that. But the British connection there, and then the banking connection there, and how not everybody who's Jewish was on board with creating the state of Israel, and in that it's going to create a
Oh,
lot of
by no
problems.
stretch of the
Yeah,
imagination. Yeah, it was
it's
a
going to create a
real.
lot of problems, and people did it anyways. And what I think is sad is people that are Jewish who have nothing to do with this whatsoever. Unfortunately, people, how people are, people put people under the bus, and so I feel like I have to make a concerted effort to uh, distinguish
Back away from that.
the government, yeah, from the rest of people. But I am alarmed by a lot of the Christian Zionism, and a lot of that stuff in general. I think, and it really disturbs me what's gone on over in Gaza. And I think my awakening to it was, hey, if I'm seeing this when I go to visit my folks who watch Fox, they like it. Okay, so the Fox News narrative by and large, okay, there's that. Okay, so the left is saying that there's ethnic cleansing going on, and then myself having kind of libertarian centric views in alternative media, if they are saying that, and other conservative folks in alternative media, but the only people that are not on board with that is kind of the rank and file, kind of the evangelical kind of Christian crowd. They're saying that no, this is not the case. Okay, the left and the call it libertarian both agree on the same thing. There's something going on here.
So the way I handled that is I said, look, first and foremost, you absolutely positively cannot blame the Jews. They're just people. Your neighbor's Jewish.
Yep.
They're not a problem. Um, you have to blame Israel with some circumspection as a country because, for example, we killed a lot of people since 9/11. And I'm not willing to take the rap for that because I've written about it, I've opposed it, I don't know what else I could have done to stop that. I'm not taking the rap for Biden's administration, Obama's administration. I didn't vote for Bush the second time. And so you got to be careful about blaming Israel, the country, because that's 6 million people or something. The easiest way to do it is to say Netanyahu.
Yep. Yep.
So if you want to say the power elite, Netanyahu becomes the metaphorical power elite. And I think there's a lot of guys in Israel who'd like to see Netanyahu get a bullet in his head because he's a problem. I'm guessing he's pretty desperate now. I think they're losing the plot. I think they're losing the narrative. And it's something I've labored over. That is when they decided to massacre the Palestinians. Did they know that it would produce a catastrophic optics problem and they would just suck it up? Or did they misjudge that, in your opinion?
So your question to me is, could you rephrase that?
So did they go after an ethnic cleanse, knowing that they would take a beating and say we're just going to have to knuckle down, we're going to take a beating, we're going to lose a lot of moral capital here, but we got to do it? Or did they think that somehow October 7th bought enough moral capital they'd get away with it? Did they
The former.
overestimate?
The former.
You think they just said we're going to suck it up? Period.
We just got. I think within a certain group of Netanyahu's thing, that's the focal point. Just like this peace agreement last I checked earlier today, that's going on. I don't think that's going to materialize or do anything. I think people are hell
Oh
bent
no, that's not
on.
going to do anything.
Yeah, they're hell bent on taking out Iran, doing the regime change thing and all that. As a side note, yeah, I think they're more or less kind of a false flag October 7th. And what I've heard from some sources is that the IDF killed Israelis, that they killed a lot of their own people, and that there's a lot of talk about, where they had the concert going on on the, I guess, on the
The
border
troops
there.
away.
There's it was like several hours of response. I mean, you just need that casus belli to foment that, or to create that, and that was the pretext. That and the fact that we can't talk about it and have a dialogue about it is really alarming to me.
So here's the
Is
question. If
crazy.
before it happened, I had said to you, Hamas is going to drop via paragliders 800 soldiers into Israel to wreak havoc, what would you have said it would take? How long would it have taken them to clean up that mess?
Oh,
What
the
would you have
response should
said
be
before it happened? Before it
immediately.
happened, yeah, 10 minutes, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I know Mossad is pretty much one of the top in the world on intelligence. I mean, even this
But they
platform.
would have helicopters in their boat. Half those guys in the
Yeah.
paragliders would be dead before they got to the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
they didn't run around for 8 hours wreaking havoc, unattacked, and then escaping.
Yeah. It's a very, very contentious topic. But I don't know. I feel like it needs attention and such. And
But I wouldn't want
um,
to be the guy who said, "Hey, I was in Germany and the Holocaust was going on. And I didn't say anything." Right? So that's kind of. I decided I was being a coward. I decided I was hiding. I mean, to say, "Look, I'm not. I don't have the intellectual firepower to join this conversation," is kind of a Doug Murray stance, where I'm saying, oh, "Leave it to the experts." Well, they're doing a terrible job, so let's start with that. Um, and I realized I just wasn't comfortable staying silent. And I'm ignorant as shit. I mean, a kid who gets his bar mitzvah probably knows more about it than me. So I don't profess to be an expert. I just profess to have opinions.
same here. Same here.
Right.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I know we're probably wrapping up here, but anything else you'd like to dispense or share that something that you feel isn't receiving enough attention?
Um, no. Um, I think we're on the cusp of the so-called financial crisis appearing. I think the markets have reached sort of peak insanity. I've been pitching this idea that this bubble, it's called the everything bubble. What scares me is this bubble tops. People are usually euphoric. 1929, 2000, the Nikkei in 89, the Nifty 50. Everyone's saying, "Oh, Brave New World, this is phenomenal. Things are going to be great." Even in '07, everyone's getting a house. You get a house, you get a house, you get a house. This bubble, no one's euphoric. They're grumpy, right? People are grumpy. We got fighting in the street grumpy. What happens at the bottom? So let's say we do a 60, 70, 80% correction, which I think is easily in the cards. I actually believe it's not going to be a crash. Every goddamn podcast I do, they always say Collum calls for a crash. I've never called for a crash. I don't believe in crashes. I don't think they do anything. I think you need a series of downturns that are just relentless and you just rip the soul out of investors. It takes time. That's the Nikkei found a bottom after 15 years, 20 years. I mean, it was a long time. The 67, 81 bear market was 14 years of a grinding, inflation gutting bear market. The 29 crash only took 3 years, but it dropped 90%. So if you want to purge like that, well, have a ball, right? I think it's coming. I think they'll do everything to stop it. They can't. This is like saying, a volcano's coming. Let's dump sandbags in it. It's a force of nature. I worry what the bottom will look like because the top is looking pretty grumpy. The boomers' fictional assets will be removed from them. So the boomers have a lot of fake assets. So that, here, the pitch, Apple's revenues are up 50% in 10 years. Their shares are up tenfold. Makes no mathematical sense. If you want to look at share buybacks, which they burned a lot of cash to do, their market cap is up sixfold. So that's a better metric for the valuation of the company, market cap, because you have to worry about share counts. Microsoft revenues grew 150%. They're up tenfold. NVIDIA, their revenues grew 25-fold. So you say, well, that's great. Their share price is up 250-fold. So NVIDIA has to cut 90% from its market cap to get to 2015 valuations. Not price, valuations. And so there's just a lot of gutting that has to occur. I think the AI bubble is a complete catastrophe in the making. I think the private equity bubble is a complete catastrophe. By themselves, they'd be catastrophes, but they're all stacked up on each other. Now, what is this bubble? What's different about it? They're always different. I believe instead of calling it the everything bubble, which it is, it's like stage 4 cancer getting into every part of your body. You're just a lumpy mess. It's a complacency bubble. Everyone knows that the markets are nuts, but everyone thinks that they will be protected or saved or retrieved. So, yeah, they're way overpriced, but the Fed will just do A, B, or C. You know, it's always dismissive. It's not, look, you don't understand. This is a wild new world, and we're just all going to be fabulously better off. They're saying they'll protect us. That's a complacency bubble. And that's something people are not. That's a language they're not using. That's a Collum original, although I think I Googled it. Other people have used it, but it's not been a mainstream view. So I'm trying to divert people from the everything bubble to a complacency bubble language, because I think that's what the problem is. People believe they will be protected. And since when does government protect you? Since when do the banks protect you? The private equity story is a horrific story. So they're doing all sorts of shenanigans. You can't get out of the investments. They might have an office building priced at $100 million that's worth $10 million. But they're not marking it at $10 million. They're marking it at $100 million. You say, well, I want to get my money out. Well, you can't because you signed a contract that says you got 10 years. We'll give it to you in 10 years. So what are they doing? They're creating new funds with new investors, selling these assets at par to the new investors so the guys in the existing funds can get the hell out. That's a capital offense to me. Those people should be hung from the neck until dead. That's way beyond fraud. That's massacre. That's mass murder. That's who knows what. And what are they trying to do? Well, now I think they've passed a law that says now, because private equity is such a wonderful thing, now people with 401ks can get into it. Guess who the sucker is? So that's where the money's going to come from. They're going to get 401k money to buy these assets. Now, another question came up in a podcast yesterday. Let's say you have an office building in New York City. You can't convert it to condos. If you don't need the office space, you say, well, then it defaults. So you go, but you've got a 50-story building in the middle there. What do you do with the building? What if it's negative equity? What if it literally is worth negative because you can't get rid of the goddamn thing? I mean, you could demo it. They proved that on 9/11, right? They could demo it. But these are big problems. I saw a claim today that if you look at the GDP and you pull away the money being spent on AI, that we've got no GDP growth. I think we've been in recession. I think if you actually use real inflation, we've had negative GDP growth for a while, years actually. The AI bubble is a particularly interesting problem because you've got companies like OpenAI, which are said to be a not-for-profit that says they're going to spend $500 billion or some ridiculous number like that. And you're going to get that where? You're a not-for-profit? Who's going to lend it to you? Based on what revenue stream? There's no revenue. There's going to be revenue streams like someone will invent an app using AI to do something. That'll make money. That doesn't pay $500 billion worth of debt off. And so the LLM stuff, the big AI stuff, all the Mag 7 are fighting to get that market, not knowing where the revenue is going to come from and knowing that the Mag 7 is going to be the Mag 1 when it's over because the other 6 are not going to be as good. So there's going to be a winner, maybe 2, but not 7, not whatever. And then Paul Kudrowski has been blogging longer than the word blog has existed. Point out something that I'd heard, but it didn't click until all of a sudden he said it, and that is this build out of infrastructure, like building a railroad, an electric grid, whatever, plumbing system for the country, interstate highway system. There's a government project that worked really well. They're building this sort of $1 trillion infrastructure that has the life expectancy of a fruit fly. In 2 or 3 years, those servers are not going to be worth a shit. The software is going to be outdated. Someone else is going to come along with better code, probably written by AI. The depreciation rate is going to be epic. And I've always thought that GDP should include a depreciation term in it. So during World War II, the GDP grew, 5% a year during World War II. But it's because we made planes and bombs that blew up. It's not GDP. Technically it is, but it's not. That's Bastiat's broken window fallacy. If you make a plane and a bomb, it's going to be destroyed within a month. If you make an appliance, instead of lasting 40 years, lasts 4 years, you should correct it by a factor of 10 based on usage. And they don't. I have a 70-year-old fridge that works. 70 years from now, there will be no 70-year-old fridges that work. And so the GDP component, where does it come from? AI is adding a ton. Healthcare. Well, healthcare is good. Well, I actually think it's starting to suck. But healthcare costs are soaring because we've got an aging population of boomers. Look at all the facilities being built around the country for boomers. All the healthcare facilities are booming. It's like we have this gigantic fleet of 25-year-old Corvairs, and we're spending a fortune to keep them on the road. Is that GDP? I don't think so. Some of it might be if it really does improve real quality of life somehow, if you invent a new scanner or something, whatever. But the way you can tell if it's real GDP is you say, if it didn't exist, right? Would we be better off? If we weren't getting unhealthy, we'd be better off. So it's really a tax. If my car never needed repair, which the repairs go into GDP, I'd be better off than the fact the car needs repair because it's depreciating. That's the inflation correction sort of thing, right? The depreciation correction. And I did the math, and if you look at the growth in GDP since the time of Christ, it compounds at about 0.1% a year. And I realized that it's because you create wealth at pretty much the exact same rate that you consume it or destroy it. And so the world's worth more now than it was at the time of Christ. But if you stop putting money into it, it would be worth the same as at the time of Christ in about 25 years. And so a lot of the GDP really is a fictional gain in wealth. It's not. So there are things that do improve. When we invented electricity, there was a big one. Oh, another book. There's a book for you. This is a great book. Robert Gordon.
Okay.
Robert Gordon. And it's called The Rise and Fall of American Growth. It is
Hmm.
a brilliant book, and I've chatted with Robert about it. It talks about what real wealth creation is.
Hmm.
And he says 1870 to 1940, we created wealth like crazy. The best decade for what's called secondary inventions. Primary is inventing electricity. Secondary is inventing appliances. Believe it or not, it was the 1930s. The Great Depression, we created more secondary inventions than any other decade. He said wealth grew like crazy 1870 to 1940, about 70 years. Tailed off a lot from 1940 to he said there was a blip around 2000 when the actual digital world seemed to actually do something, and then it flatlined, in his opinion. So we get about 70 years of real growth, and you say, okay, let's look back. Japan, World War II to the present, right? They got about 45 years. China, they'll get some number of years. There's kind of a life cycle here. And so I don't think we're creating a lot of wealth. I don't think Facebook is wealth. I don't think Twitter's wealth. I don't think Tesla's wealth, for Christ's sakes. I don't think the electric car is the optimum in automobiles. I think the hybrid is. The healthcare I've already talked about. All the code, all the stuff that's going away as fast as we can make it, furiously creating it to keep up. So I think our reckoning day is getting close. It feels like we're on black ice. The precious metal market acts like it. We're still hitting new highs, but on some fateful day at 2:03 in the afternoon, you will hit a high before a big secular downturn. It's the ironic, paradoxical moment of maximum optimism as measured by price, at precisely the moment where the optimism has zero justification, as measured by the fact you're about to go down through a multi-decade slump.
Now it seems that is kind of coinciding with a lot of people say that we're already in this global conflict going on. So I guess there's something to be said about that.
Collapse of complex societies by Joseph Tainter. We have stretched the empire, and now it's eating us. The Romans stretched the empire to the point where it couldn't pay the bills. Mm-hmm. It was no longer an advantage being a Roman.
So as it relates to the global conflict that we are basically in right now, where I would say, based off many of the people that I've had on and looking into things, we're already in a WW3, and that Iran or NATO making those missile strikes into Russia, or et cetera, could be the really the catalyst for more kinetic kind of stuff.
So let me ask you this: as a military guy, does when we say that Russia got hit with some drone or this or that, that has nothing to do with Ukraine, right? Ukrainians don't know how to. Ukrainians don't have the technology to hit Russia. There's no one left. Is that right or not?
Well, I don't have like sources in the middle. I mean, I do, but I don't like reach out to people who are actively involved in such. So a lot of this is commentary. So I'm not. Well, I think it's making a blank right now in my mind. Rephrase your question. I'm sorry.
Well, so you hear that some drones hit some critical infrastructure in Russia.
Yeah.
Were those drones being delivered by Ukrainians?
I guess so. You're talking about that attack that happened a while back, where it was hidden?
It happens on a weekly basis. Now, it could be they're not hitting anything. Right? It could be that's the fiction. But let's say they're hitting critical infrastructure in Russia.
Yeah.
I heard a Patriot missile silo takes 40 people to run it. So if we have a Patriot missile silo, say, located in Ukraine, just to pick the one that I have a number on,
Sure.
is that run by 40 Ukrainians?
I mean, I'd imagine there are many other players involved in that.
Well,
If that answers your question.
I could imagine there being a Ukrainian where they say, okay, for technical reasons, I need you to hit this button.
Oh, I get you. Yeah. Yeah. It's
It's sort of
I've been
like they're
trying.
blaming a Ukrainian to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline, right? They're blaming a
Yeah.
Ukrainian guy on a yacht. That's like saying I flapped my arms and flew to Mars, right? That's pretty much absurd. But if they admit we blew it up, it's an act of war. So we have to blame a Ukrainian on a yacht.
Well, you know who'd be a good person for you to talk to or interview is my friend James Bartleone. He was a former Top Gun fighter pilot. He's in his, I think, mid to late 50s. Um, he's got actually a nonprofit veterans group that does retreats for vets. And um, I'm mentioning him because he has a lot of great contacts in the military still. And actually, through one of these retreats I actually went on, uh, his organization is called the Sub Vet, so I got to give them a shout out. Um, one of the gentlemen who was there, I met. He ran SEAL Team 6. He ran. He was a Force Master
I
Chief
thought
in the
they
SEAL
died. I
community.
thought SEAL Team 6 died.
Uh,
Weren't they the guys who died in a helicopter crash?
Oh no, I mean he wasn't on that mission. He was a force master. He was high ranking enlisted within that community. I'm bringing him up because he's a person I'd like to have on the show. But yeah, I mean it looks like it's just a powder keg. It's so it's only a matter
So
of time.
it feels like it does. I hate to say it's World War III because that then makes it seem tame. Because we are existing, we're not dying, we're not getting fried, we're
Yeah.
not in a wartime economy, which is to me a fascinating topic. How during World War I or II did Europe function? I don't understand how goods and services got provided. I'm sure there's great books on it. I just don't know. So I think we are knocking on the door of World War III. We're doing things that are so. That's why Jan, by the way, followed me because I challenged someone and I said, look, let's face this. This is a very risky game we're playing here. It's not what you say it is, and it's risky. And I think Jan saw that and said, okay, I know this guy. I'll ping him.
Well, and if you'd like to, of course you have X, you can communicate with them. They're there, but I'm actually planning to have them on later this month. But if I can have
Tag
you
me
two
on
meet.
Twitter when you have him on. Tag me on Twitter when you have him on, and I'll listen. Let's start with that.
He's very interesting.
He
A lot
is.
of.
Well, he went down to the Darien Gap with a couple of friends of mine, and they watched what was going on down there, and it wasn't what we were being told. So
Nothing seems to be what we're being told these days.
nothing,
Yeah, it's
nothing.
yeah, wow. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed. I've been looking forward to this episode. Oh, and Tom Luongo says hi, by the way. I had him on just a few hours earlier.
Oh, well, I had him on. I was with him yesterday on a four-way with Tom and I. Tom and I really sort of do battle on some stuff. Not
Hmm.
evil, but
Sure.
we go at it pretty good when we get on there. And
How about Alex Craner?
I am on. I've been on podcasts with Alex, and Alex was in my Zoom group,
Hmm.
and I was watching Alex do a podcast. I had him on in the background this morning,
Hmm.
and he's a
I,
very smart guy. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Mike Ferris was interviewing Alex this morning.
yeah, yeah,
Isn't it
yeah.
an odd world that we know the same people?
Yeah.
Is this a small world?
I, I guess we're in an echo chamber. Yeah, Alex, I think is I really enjoy listening. He's one of my favorites to listen to,
Very
and
thoughtful, interesting world
yes,
experience. Interesting world experience.
yeah.
The
I've had
guy I'd
zero
love to
luck.
see you interview is a guy named Stephen Coughlin.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
Stephen's on Twitter. He was in
Okay.
my Zoom group, but I didn't know who he was.
Oh.
And we didn't all know each other. It was probably about 100 of us total, and there'd be varying degrees of attendance on any given thing. And one day he starts talking about Hegelian philosophy. And I'm listening to this guy go, where's this spectacled, geeky looking guy going with this, right? And then he starts making sense. And then someone interrupts him and says, are you a professor of philosophy or something? He said, no, I'm a lawyer by training, but I work for the NSA. You go, oh, that plot just thickened. And then at one point, it's clear this guy has profound wisdom. So at one point, we're talking about a they, classic they. They are doing this. I said, Stephen, who the hell are they? And he said something that profoundly changed the way I think about stuff. He said, I don't like to name names because then you'll stop thinking. So if I say Bill Gates created the vaccine or the virus, you kind of wash your hands of it and have dinner and say, okay, I've got the answer. I expanded that idea to never draw a conclusion that allows you to stop thinking. So when people use phrases like the uniparty politically, I don't like it because it's a way of taking a complex thing and simplifying it, and putting it on a bumper sticker and saying, I'm done. When someone calls me a conspiracy theorist, I go, you're trying to stop thinking. So then I'm reading Dinah West's book about World War II, Stalin, and she mentions Stephen Coughlin. And she says he's the GOAT in the Pentagon on radical Islam. I didn't know that. So he's the guy. I'm reading Diana's book called American Betrayal. It's a great book. She got mad at me when I was on Tucker because she got dragged into the shitstorm that I created by saying something that got the Zionists on my ass. But I did a podcast with her, with Mike Ferris. But she mentions Coughlin. Diana's book is so different than the World War II story that we're told that I wasn't even sure I was buying it. So I first talked to my brother. I said, isn't this just like a McCarthy 2.0 here, what we're getting? He said, no, just keep reading. So I reached out to Stephen and I said, Stephen, Diana mentioned your name in her book. Is she credible? And have you read American Betrayal? And he says, oh, it's brilliant. It's absolutely credible. And she had to go into hiding after she wrote the book. The neocons went after her, which is why she's mad at me when I dragged her back into the limelight. And that guy is a guy you really want to talk to. He's so thoughtful. He's so deep. There's a guy named Schlusser on Twitter. Lee Schlusser, and he's like 4 tour of duty intelligence type. Again, soft-spoken. Lee Schlusser, soft-spoken. Mm-hmm. I got him on the podcast circuit, so he wasn't doing any, and I said, you want to do some? And he said, sure. So Lee Schlusser. And he would be fun to talk to. Tell him I said hi. And Tony Schaffer is on Twitter. Tony's phenomenal. He's the guy who said the Twitter that the Clinton Foundation traffics children, which I did know the answer, but I was testing him at some level. Tony Schaffer, let me give you a Twitter feed for him. It's something like TS Spooky. It's a weird Twitter feed. TS at T_S. No, I'm not finding it. Spooky. I had a funny story with Tony. You got to find him. Tony Schaffer. I can find it if you really want to, but not on this time scale, unfortunately. I said something favorable about him on Twitter one day. And some journalist jumped in and started hammering him, saying, why did he lie about this? Why did he lie about that? And then he jumps in and starts fighting with the guy. And they go back and forth and back and forth. And I sent him a DM and I said, Tony, I'm sorry to drag you into that. You guys obviously have a history here. I'm not sure what I triggered, but I didn't intend to. And he proceeds to tell me that he says he was trying to get me to say shit that he doesn't know and wants me to spill my guts. And then he proceeds to tell me, because he was picking on Tony about this Bergdahl guy. The guy went over to ISIS, ended up at ISIS. The question is, did they get him or did he turn and go to ISIS? What was the story? And he says, what he doesn't know, which I probably shouldn't say, but he's not going to listen, is that I was the point man on retrieving Bergdahl. And that turns out to be Schaffer, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer. But I'm not seeing, let's look at people and see if I can, God damn it, I have his Twitter feed. I just can't, it's got such a strange Twitter handle that I can never find it when I need it. Something like TS Spooky.
Okay, I'll write that down. TS Spooky, okay. Yeah.
Twitter's like this big Rolodex. You use it right. I've thought about, I remember one day a friend of mine said, we're about to get kicked off Twitter. And I said, why? And he said, because Jack just followed both of us. I go, well, I don't think Jack follows you when he wants to boot you off Twitter. So let's start with that. And I said, but I know why he followed us. And I explained to him, I said that Twitter's a great experience, which he's so happy to see someone not bitch about Twitter, right? And I said, it's really quite a lovely experience. And I said, and then I made reference to this friend of mine, Rudy Havenstein. And I said, he's the best of Twitter. And someone must have said, hey, Jack, someone just said something favorable about Twitter. You ought to check it out. And Jack went and followed us both. Now he's deleted everyone. Now he follows 3 people, and probably one of them is his wife or something, right? Who knows? But weird shit like this. So Twitter is a strange ecosystem, very strange. And the connections you can make are just staggering.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's something that I've come to appreciate. Carving out the time to create the show, doing it is well, apart from the conversations that you have, but also just the people that you meet. I mean, from all over the world. It's been an experience. Yeah.
I'm goddamn. Oh,
I'm gonna have to check out those books.
No, that's not him. If you want to get to Schaffer at some point, give me a yell and I will work at getting to him.
Sure. And
maybe I can find him this way.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed, on a side note, the interview you did with Tucker. I watched it and enjoyed seeing you on there. What's up?
It was fun to do. It was fun to
good.
do. I was glad when I got to the hotel and they actually had a reservation because I kept thinking someone's duped me.
Oh.
And they had one, and it turns out it was fun. It was kind of a bucket lister. And then I got myself in trouble with the Zionists. So.
Boy, oh my gosh. Well, the nature of the whole conversation will change in time, I suspect, just like everything. But yeah, it's
to Israel's chagrin. A guy who did a great podcast one day was Brett Weinstein, who again I've said great things about, nothing but the highest regard for. And he lamented being Jewish and watching Israel burn so much moral capital that they came out of World War II with.
Mm-hmm.
He said we had such a tailwind, and they're frying it. They're just destroying it. And that's how I'd feel.
Yeah.
I go, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I don't know enough about geopolitics to really understand what they're doing, but.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So if I'm on a site,
It's TS Pookie with underlines between every letter. TS
okay,
Pookie with underlines
spooky.
between every letter.
Oh wow. Okay.
And there's not a C in his name. I keep putting a C in his name.
Hmm. Damn.
Right. He's amazing, actually. Amazingly blunt. And I fact checked his ass off for 2.5 hours during his Zoom call.
Hmm.
And he mentioned being with Rumsfeld here and there. And there he is all over the internet. He's the man.
Damn.
So
Well,
you
I'm gonna
get
have to
TS
go.
Spooky on here.
I'm gonna have to reach out and go down that rabbit hole and try and reach out to him. And some of these other people, Craner, Alex, I've never had any luck getting him on, so I'll have to.
I'll
Uh,
try to get Alex for you.
yeah,
Send me an
you
email
know.
and remind me just so I don't forget.
Okay. What's funny is it's been a lot. I've borrowed my experience in when I was in finance. Just follow the right. What do they say? The fortune's in the follow up. Just keep follow up, follow up, follow up,
Where were
follow.
you in finance? Remind me. You've got all these backgrounds that I
I
should
know
interview
I moved
you.
around a lot, embarrassingly. Yeah. So at one point I was at hey, at one point I was at Cushman Wakefield. I was with a team remotely out of SF, but I was in Central California, and then I was with a family office for a brief period in Newport Beach.
What was your special? Did you have a specialty, like
Well,
derivatives or?
for the family office, it was lending. It was their basically yeah uh, private money lending for
So
specifically.
you must have a strong opinion about private equity and the private debt markets and stuff like that. I mean,
I
they look like a
I
mess to me.
Yeah, I've been out of it for some time, but I got some exposure to it. The family that I was with, they're very much in the private equity arena. Apparently, they're global. Yeah, there's not a whole lot about them online and such. But it was an interesting world to get exposed to, and then also even, I had a social club in Newport Beach, so I did a bunch of I tried so much stuff and I've had a lot of failures. I have a lot of things that haven't worked out.
Well,
And
that's what
so,
entrepreneurs do, right?
yeah.
Entrepreneurs aren't known for their successes. It's known for the volume of failures.
Oh, if people only knew, right? People see the persona but they don't see all the, lot of challenges, a lot of getting yelled at.
Yeah, Edison, I think it was said something like, "It's just one less thing I have to try now."
Yeah. But I tell you what, the social club stuff, doing that and seeing that world. That was interesting. You mentioned the Illuminati thing. There was a group. I didn't partake in it, but there was a group. I'm acquainted. They have since sold the house, but there was this house in Newport. I think it sold for like 16 million recently. But I guess, kind of more or less, kind of like a family friend, if you will. And people would rent the house. And one of the parties that were held there, I was not there, was a group that called themselves the Illuminati, and they engaged in debauchery and orgies and all sort. I mean, just so that house has
So,
so
so
many
it's just,
stories.
so it's just a fraternity, really.
It was, I mean, they were renting out the house, but it just, oh my gosh, it just so
So the
many.
Nasdaq dropped over 3.5% today, and
Oh,
gold is up 1.5%. So there is a sense of volatility in the traditional sense in the markets. There's something going on, and
yeah.
and 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 the yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you know,
And
ten,
my portfolio correlates inversely with the markets, not by shorting, but rather just by virtue of the fact that I buy shit that are contrary to the market. So I'm having a good day today,
mhm.
which is I do
Well,
not want to correlate with the Nasdaq. Some point that Nasdaq, if you're correlated with it, you're going to eat it.
Well, I have so much catching up to do as it relates to the finance world that you're in. Part of doing the show has also been seeking to fill that void. So I have a lot to learn in that arena. So
We all
any
do.
exposure is good.
We all do. So the Nasdaq's
But
down 820 points. It's a lot for the Nasdaq. That's enjoyable
shit.
for me. It's a famous Roman proverb says, "The vanquished weep, the victors do not laugh." So
Hmm.
when the shit finally hits the fan, it's not going to be satisfying. It's going to be like winning a war. You're going to look at it and you're going to go, did we really have to do all that? Right? Was all that necessary?
Absolutely. Man.
So
Well, what do you got going on later on today?
I got to go home, say hi to my wife, uh,
Mm.
and I've got to start writing. I've got to start writing. I've been reading and procrastinating on getting started writing, and I got a lot of writing to do. So,
What if, not that you haven't conceived of this before, but I mean, maybe when you're working out, when you're driving, just dictating to your phone and then getting that blob of your thoughts, and then from
well,
there.
I do that nonstop,
Oh, you do?
absolutely
Okay. Okay.
nonstop.
For
Yeah.
for the writing.
The
Okay.
problem is,
Okay.
is I have to write.
Oh, for sure. No, I get you. I I,
And
I can
so
appreciate that.
I listen to the audiobooks on my phone. I listen to podcasts while cooking dinner. That sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so the brain is never off. My wife says, she says, because I'm going deaf, and she says, not hearing correlates with increasing dementia. I said, I'm dumping audio into my skull nonstop, so maybe my ears don't work, but I'm not tuned out. Right?
I hear you.
I'm only tuned out when she asks me to do something. That's when all of a sudden the hearing goes really bad, really fast.
Despite the optics, I mentioned I have a landscape company. I'm actually out there, believe it or not, at times helping out, and my hearing is something I'm very conscious of, because I know once you lose it,
So you have
it's
a
gone.
revenue stream that does not depend on advertising of your YouTube channel, is by the sounds of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got the landscape, and then I have something called Local Play TV, which is actually on the App Store. I actually give access to you offline. That's something that I'm rolling out with a group out of Newport, out of Orange County. That you'll see. We're gonna probably take it on Shark Tank. One of the guys, where you can watch local
Really?
television from your.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
going to have to tag me on that one.
yeah, where you're watch local television on your phone, and for $9.99, so $10 a month. It's so you're in New York, you're in Ithaca, I believe. You're in New York, so you go wherever you are in the country. You can, like, let's say you're traveling, you're on Tucker again or Joe Rogan. You can look at what's going on local. So we're that I have, and then well, obviously there's this, and what else I've got. Yeah, those are the landscape, that, yeah. So I'm trying
You
to
can't even
diversify,
think of
Dave.
all your if you can't even think of all your companies, you're doing a lot.
So, yep, that's my world. But there, I'll wrap it up. But I mentioned the landscape because when I'm helping out and such, I listen to geopolitics and all this stuff going on, and it's like undercover boss. You wouldn't know. There's no blazer.
It's the problem is there's more noise, less signal now.
There you
You
go.
really have trouble getting, so they can't knock the signal down, so they've upped the noise.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they're flooding the zone with nonsense, which is why my theory should be taken with a grain of salt, because I could be just spewing complete garbage. Now, I'm trying to get it right, but it could be complete garbage.
Well, same here. I mean, I'm just trying to understand, as best I can, and we may never truly know
It's true.
what goes on in the nature of things. So,
And then in the
but
digital world, they'll rewrite the whole thing. We won't even have hardbound versions to go back to, say, here's what they said contemporaneously, because they will change
yeah,
the script. Right? So history is going to be a tough thing. Can you imagine trying to write about what happened in the last couple of years, 100 years from now?
yeah.
It'll be
There's
just
gonna be
nonsense.
a lot of revisionist history
A lot. There already is.
w-
We do it every
w-
day.
with a with a Marxist bent.
You betcha. You betcha. Well,
Well,
see you later. You go
yeah.
to
How
dinner.
how
I'll
can
go
people
to dinner.
how can people learn more about you and get in touch with you, Dave?
Well, I'm on Twitter at David B. Collum. My pinned tweet is last year's year in review. Um, I've had to edit, as I said, 3,000 to 4,000 pages of previous years in review, so it was eye-opening. Um, you got to be focused. I'm told, according to Peak Prosperity, their site alone got about 500,000 clicks on it, so it does okay. And I try to answer emails, but it's getting a little tough. It's getting a little oppressive. So don't be surprised if I'm slow, and don't send me 20 pages of thoughts. I don't. I get a lot of those. And as much as I'll start reading it, but as soon as my attention span is really quick to say no, I can't do this one.
For sure.
You got to bring your A game.
Absolutely. All right, Dave. Well, hey, appreciate your time, and we do these like every 6 months. So
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
And let me know if there's someone I can help you with, because I do have a pretty good Rolodex at this point.
I appreciate it. I'll be sure to reach out and give you
Okay.
the credit.
Adios.
All right. Hey, have a great weekend. You take care. Quick ask. Over half of you who watch the show regularly haven't yet subscribed. If you've enjoyed the show, you're finding value in it, subscribing is really the best way to support the channel. It's, of course, free. It literally takes 2 seconds, and it lets the algorithm know that this content matters. And of course, my commitment to you is going to be that I'm going to continue to bring on great guests, refine those questions. And of course, I'm always receptive to your feedback. If there's certain people that you'd like to have on, or certain questions, or this, that, and the other that you'd like to have as part of the show going forward, things of that nature, please let me know. I'm pretty easy to access. Anyhow, that's my commitment to you. If you can subscribe, that would mean a lot. Thanks.